I was in sniper sustainment training. The TV was up on the wall in the corner in the sniper hooch, and we saw it on the news. Probably like every other special ops guy, that moment was, we want to go kill whoever just did that. I guess we realized that 5th Group is going to be the ones who actually go. And of course, we were insanely jealous. Because people got to realize, like, when you're a Green Beret or a Navy SEAL or whatever, and shit like that goes down, that's like, a Green Beret that doesn't see war is like a guy who never was allowed to play in a game. Little did I know that we would have our chance too, but for us on my team, it was Iraq. What would be definitely the pinnacle of my time in Special Forces, and one of the biggest ops ever, I think, in the history of the Green Berets, actually, I think.
Drinking and driving will change your whole world. The next time you're out with friends, consider what would happen if you got pulled over after drinking, like the legal fees, or the time in court, or a DUI on your record. Your decision to drink and drive could change someone else's world too, if you hurt or kill them in a crash. Instead, what if your decision to call a sober ride changed your world for the better? Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He's a 20-year Army veteran, had a handful of years in the infantry, and then 15 years as a Green Beret. He's the author of a number of books, including One Green Beret, which we're going to talk about. And we just spent about the last hour talking about shred metal and playing guitars, and totally geeked out amp-wise and what have you. A lot of that conversation is on Patreon, so if you are a metalhead and want to deep dive into Mark's experience and my limited experience, feel free to check that out on our Patreon channel. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Mark Giaconia. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, you got it.
All right, good.
Good enough.
Full disclaimer, I'm going to start this a little different in that, as most of you watching know, I never wear a shirt this color, ever. It's either black, gray, or super dark blue. I don't know if we had some sort of didn't get the memo on what to wear, but we're almost matching, and I don't know what the fuck happened.
Quantum entanglement or something.
Yeah, some string theory going on, I guess. What's the last full book that you read?
The last full book I read I just read The Founding of New England.
Really?
Yeah.
Being from Connecticut.
Yeah, I'm actually very, let's say, proud of the Yankee in me.
Yeah.
So,
what was there a single takeaway or biggest takeaway from the book that either surprised you?
Yeah, one thing that kind of surprised me was I didn't realize, and hopefully I got this right from reading the book, is that when the first folks came over, the founders came over in the early 1600s and really started going into New England. There was the Massachusetts Bay Colony, of course. I didn't realize that the Massachusetts Bay Colony appeared to become almost as bad as England in terms of, I guess, like its control freakiness, let's put it that way.
No shit.
So the Connecticut and Rhode Island are almost spin-offs during this period where there became like a New England frontier where the other states got basically established coming out of that. So there was like lessons learned of they were implemented in Connecticut and Rhode Island and probably Vermont and other places, which I don't know as much about, but where they're like, hey, came from England, established Massachusetts Bay Colony, didn't do some stuff very well there. It was looking almost as oppressive as anything else. Let's try some different stuff, and that's where, my big takeaway was how important I think Connecticut is to the true principles of like liberty that we see today. Right? There's a reason why Connecticut's called the Constitution State. It's because the first, I forget, it was called like the Fundamental Orders or something. Like Connecticut's initial almost constitution was actually a big influence on the founders of our current Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and all that. So I don't know. I'm a very proud Connecticut guy, a nutmegger, as they would call it. So, and I'm a huge, I'm a huge reader of New England history, and I also read a ton of philosophy. So I read a lot, by the way. Like my latest book is one of hundreds, but I read. But the one before that I just read was Heidegger, is his big flagship thing on being and time.
Oh, wow.
Actually, is it Heidegger? You might want to check on that one. I forget.
Fact check them.
Yeah.
Do the Rogan Jamie fact check.
Yeah.
Have you been, being from that area, I'm curious, with Boston being such a still very proud, patriotic type of town, have you ever attended the annual 4th of July Declaration of Independence reading where it was read originally?
I have never done that. No.
It's I haven't either. I'd love to. It's kind of a bucket list thing for me, I guess. But they read it from the balcony of the building where it was originally read, right by Faneuil Hall, and
that would be awesome.
what is it called? Quincy something. It's like this shopping area right by the bay or whatever. But they do it every 4th of July. It'd be super cool. I read a book fairly recently called The First Principles. Have you heard of that?
I don't think so.
I think it'd be one that you'd like, given your interest in it. It's kind of a deep dive into the influences that our founding fathers had, most notably from the Greeks and the Romans, and kind of the Greek being liberal, Roman being conservative kind of mashup that influences government structure, architecture, the way our military is designed. I mean, all that stuff. But it was really fascinating to see how, I didn't realize how big of an influence that played in our founding fathers' kind of inception of this country, not so much based off of just getting away from Britain and, I guess unfucking that aspect of it, but just how well read and how well kind of learned the founding fathers were on Greek and Roman history.
Yeah, they were. I think they were geniuses of philosophy and really human nature.
Right.
Like they baked like realistic human nature into our founding that no one ever had before.
In a timeless way too. That and I think to that point, it's the reason it's timeless is because it's human nature, and that doesn't really change. And I agree. To me, it's kind of depressing almost in that when you look at the average age of the founding fathers when they were doing it, and just how fucking educated they were on everything comparative to people that age now. And I mean, they were way smarter than I am, even in my late 40s. But I wish that our education system and pipeline would get back to trying to mimic or mirror those days. Because I think
agree.
Our
basic,
country,
big picture, basic. Reading is what they did.
Yeah.
I think it's also back then, if you think about what were the forms of entertainment, and reading was the primary form of entertainment, I think, in a lot of cases, because it's not like you could pop on the TV and then drool for a couple hours,
right?
To pacify yourself in the name of entertainment. You had to put some skin in the game to be entertained.
Yeah.
And that was, I think reading was so intrinsic in people's lives that.
Agreed. I mean, it was not just a luxury, but it was the backbone of how people grew up and learned everything, and to me, probably the most kind of heartbreaking or frustrating missed opportunity nowadays with technology being this weird double-edged sword. There's access unlike ever before to things that have been written thousands of years ago that nobody, by comparison, very few people percentage-wise take advantage of. And to me, the neatest aspect of being able to read Marcus Aurelius's, journals and meditations, it's almost like having a conversation with somebody that's, 2,500 years old, and
totally.
Again, it seems like such a swing and a miss, for so many kids nowadays, having zero interest in that, having unlimited access to it, and just not taking advantage of it.
And instead, just scrolling through bullshit.
Yeah, people dancing on TikTok and, just fucking wasting their time.
Total waste of your life.
Yeah. There was a really cool quote. I don't remember where I saw it or who said it, but The gist, and I'll butcher it, but the gist of it was if somebody followed you around for an entire day and took notes on what you do, what you spend your time doing,
Yeah.
and then you read through that, like, how would that make you feel? And to me, that's a really good kind of mentality shift or way to look at how you're spending your time, you know?
Nowadays, you actually need to do that. I need to do it consciously because you can very quickly scroll away hours of your life with, barely, I might call it like barely interesting enough to keep your attention, but does you actually no good whatsoever.
Yeah, for sure. What's something you wish you were better at?
I wish I was better at a lot of things. I wish I was a better husband, father. That would be one thing. I wish I was a better songwriter, to our previous conversation. I don't know. I also wish I wouldn't waste as much time that I have. I got some aspirations to write some more, but I keep the bandwidth just isn't there from the day job,
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. There's so many things I'm not that good at that's a long list. I don't know.
Maybe summarizing what you're not good at is on that list.
Yeah, exactly.
Identifying where my inadequacies are. Do you have a favorite quote?
Yeah, I do. Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. Is probably like one of the, if you think about it, that's like the foundation of critical thinking. Like no matter what you're looking at, you should actually be examining it.
Would you say he's your favorite philosopher, being into philosophy?
Not really, no. Actually, I mean, he was so foundational that if you're into philosophy, I mean, you got to kind of read Socrates, and he's got some good stuff. He's also got some stuff that's kind of questionable, but he was, I don't read things, from like a judgmental perspective. I just trying to consume the knowledge of it, but he's essential to read.
Do you have a favorite philosopher?
I would have to say that recently one of my favorites is Nietzsche, actually, because for one reason his ideas are really kind of out there, but unlike most other philosophers, he writes really well. So you can actually consume it easier than reading. One of my other favorites is Immanuel Kant. I really like the German school of philosophy. I actually speak German halfway decently, so I try to read them in German.
Oh, that's cool.
I usually fail. I went to language school in the Army for German, SF language school anyway. But
it seems odd that they would send you to German. I mean, almost no matter when you went through, if you're under the age of 90. I mean,
yeah. Well, I initially I thought the same thing until I was like driving around in the Balkans. And almost anywhere I went, I could find someone who spoke German.
Oh, wow.
Especially in the Croat areas, you had attendance. I think they still taught it in school. It was like late 90s. Even in Iraq, like Kurdish guys spoke German, quite a few of them, because they did like migrant work in Germany or German-speaking countries. So
Wow.
I had actually quite a few guys that I could talk to normally, in German in both Iraq and Kosovo and Bosnia.
Yeah. That's really cool. I had no idea.
So Kant is another one, but man, talk about a tough read to even in either language. It was out of my league in German.
Yeah.
I went for the English version, but his thing is like a flagship or a major milestone in philosophy, I think, in the epistemological side of philosophy. He's huge.
I mean, so to kind of reduce it to a singularity, if that's possible, what is his thing?
I think I would say he. So this is, by the way, I have no formal education in philosophy. So some philosopher listening to this is probably going to call bullshit, maybe. But there's kind of two big philosophical arenas. There's the rationalism and empiricism. And rationalism is kind of like it's like the nature versus nurture kind of argument. But the rationalists are like basically we aren't born with virtually any intrinsic things and everything is an experiential whatever, where empiricism is is different, where we do have certain a priori like stuff. And Kant's big book was called A Critique of Pure Reason, which I think was like a response to Rousseau or Descartes, one of those big guys, who was also awesome stuff to read, by the way. I probably got those definitions a little wrong, but his big thing was like, again, this is all my personal interpretation, is that he kind of unioned those two things, where he was like, there's this, and I think he really expressed this concept of things as they are versus how we see them, and which elements of knowledge are actually a priori as opposed to they're just completely learned from experience. And like he broke that down super well. So you might have heard the word like noumena.
Yeah.
Noumena is what he used as a word, or at least that's the English translation of things as they are versus how we see them.
Okay.
And it's like, you and I and everyone are basically a giant blob of like molecular, astrophysical shit, but somehow,
That should be a bumper sticker.
but somehow our eyes and stuff, like, and our sensories that we were given as the biological critters that we are, like, we see each other and we see this room and all that. And he kind of brought out, like, maybe there's this stuff as it is versus the stuff as we see it.
Yeah.
And then he's like, certain things must be a priori. And that was for him, space and time were like things that have to be kind of baked into the way that the world works. That's debatable, by the way, by many philosophers. And then he also had this concept of like the 12 categories of how we kind of process information. And which I found all that like super fascinating. So his stuff has driven like cognitive science, and there's like philosophy of mind is another section of philosophy. By the way, I'm total nerd fest on philosophy, man. Like,
I love it.
I have probably read every major work of philosophy. Ever since my first college course in philosophy, I fell in love with it.
No, I mean, to me, it's fascinating. Again, I think it goes back to kind of the point of it's such a lost element of our society. There's so few people that get into it even a little bit.
Yeah.
I am curious, as being into it to the degree that you are, is there a single book that's a 101 into philosophy as a genre that you'd recommend?
I other than like a textbook for like a philosophy 101, I can't think of anybody's like particular.
Because to me, I think that's probably the biggest issue with it, is that it's such a vast area that there's almost a paradox of choice element to it, of like, dude, I don't even know where the fuck to start.
Yeah, exactly. A good place to start maybe is actually like the ancient philosophers, because they covered a lot of ground at a wave top, and a lot of stuff afterwards was drilling into their stuff. So yeah, maybe like Plato, Plato's Republic is a classic, Another obvious one is like Aristotle. Like Aristotle laid out a ton of hugely foundational just ways of thinking about philosophy. And there's like, I think Socrates or Plato had like the 5 dialogues of Socrates, and actually now you made me think about it, that I had a book called The 5 Dialogues at one point, and that one was really eye-opening from a high level. So maybe that would be something I'd recommend, like looking into those.
One question I like to ask, and it's kind of in the same vein, I imagine I know what, or generally what your answer will be, but if time travel were possible, where and when would you go and why?
Man, I think I would go to the founding of Connecticut.
Tried
and
true.
like take my horse and cart up into the woods, start cutting trees down, and build my house, which those houses are still standing around where I live today.
Oh, shit.
And homestead myself into New England and found America. That would be my, I love New England, man. It's a theme for me. And like, but the founding of the country, I would like to participate in.
Yeah.
So like the idea of like people came over, there was nothing here. They came over, basically it was like a perilous journey to even think about coming over, which, by the way, I think has something to do with the American spirit, starting with the people who basically had the balls to jump on a ship in 1600s and friggin' take their chance at the high seas and then land in a place where literally at that point people thought there might be like evil demons. They didn't know what was in the New World. Get off the ship with nothing and make their way in basically the primordial forest of the New World, man. And like, it's mind-blowing to me that they did that. Like, it borderline chokes me up thinking about it. Yeah. So just to be a participant in that, I would do that. Would be what I do without question, man.
Well, last but not least, being such a big music guy, is there a song that's permanently in your playlist?
Yeah. There's actually quite a few that are permanently in there.
What's the first one that comes to mind?
I think the first one that comes to mind is actually the Jason Becker guy I was telling you about, the shredding, the GOAT of shredding, in my opinion.
Yeah.
His album was titled Perpetual Burn, and the song is Perpetual Burn, which is like, you want to hear guitar shredding, that is, I think it was like 1987 or 8 that he wrote that, and I think he was 17.
Wow.
Or 18. Yeah, recorded the whole album supposedly in like one session.
Damn.
So yeah, Perpetual Burn is on the top of my list.
I love it. We've already talked about it a little bit, but so you're from Connecticut. Can you kind of summarize your childhood from any significant, impactful moments, siblings, sports play, just what was growing up in Connecticut when you did like?
Yeah. So I grew up in the late 70s and 80s. You know, I'm 50-ish, so you can. I graduated from high school in 91, so I'm mostly a child of the 80s. I grew up in eastern Connecticut. So Connecticut is one of those places where people have the perception of ascot wearing, sailboat riding, you know.
That's western Connecticut.
Yeah, and that's western Connecticut, generally speaking.
So it's kind of like Massachusetts in that way.
Probably, yeah. The western Mass is very different than like eastern Mass. Very similar in Connecticut. In Connecticut, you have kind of like rural pockets, and I was in one of those. But northwest, northeast, and there's actually some along the Connecticut River Valley. There are plenty of rural people. And, you know, people always say, you know, think Connecticut's this insanely liberal state, and the majority is, but generally it's about half and half, though. Actually, typical rural is mostly conservative, and they're you know, it's a little more liberal than most in general. But I grew up in eastern Connecticut in a rural, and, you know, what you could call it the swamp Yankee lifestyle, which is, you know, hunting, fishing, woodworking, kind of like the old Yankee kind of spirit, man. Just imagine, you know, stone walls and fields and brooks and streams and natural beauty. Connecticut is super beautiful if you get off of I-95. And like,
do you think
it was good. My dad was a Vietnam vet. He's actually a Silver Star recipient, 3 Purple Hearts.
Damn.
My childhood was
Army or?
Army infantry,
Wow.
9th Infantry Division. So we didn't have a lot of money. My dad was in and out of the hospital when I was real young, getting multiple surgeries from his wounds. You know, he was shot like 4 different times, severely wounded. So I remember those kind of moments of my mom cleaning out my dad's ankle wound on the kitchen table, you know. And so, you know, I don't want to say we were like poor, but we weren't like even middle class, I wouldn't say. We were typical rural American people, man, you know.
Siblings?
The what? Yeah, I got a brother. He's older, a couple years older than me, who, you know, he's a successful business guy. He's a VP in a big company, and, you know, went to a hardcore MBA at Vanderbilt, and is an amazing guy. Yeah. I had a great childhood, man. Like, the memories of my childhood are 100% positive. I can't think of really anything bad about it.
Wow.
Really.
Was your dad, being a Vietnam vet, the catalyst that made you want to join the military? or was there something else?
I think it probably was, but I think I was one of those kids at 8. I was kind of a late bloomer, so even at like 17 and 18, I was pretty much guided completely by subconscious instinct, you know? And I think at that time, the military was the only thing I really understood what I would be getting myself into. Like, no one at that point in my entire family had ever been to college. My mom actually took some night courses, but not that much at that time. And I just didn't even really know what it was. So college to me wasn't going to be an option. And the military was something I understood. So I wanted to do it. So yeah, I'm sure that influenced it, let's put it that way. But
Sure. Was Special Forces something that you thought of prior to joining and that you wanted to ultimately get to, or was it infantry and then you kind of learned more about it and was like, man, I want to go do that now?
yeah, it wasn't. Like, I didn't really even know much about, especially the Green Berets specifically. But yeah, no, I just wanted to be an infantryman. That's what my dad was. And it wasn't till, I don't know, probably 3 years into it, or two or three. Yeah, about 3 years into it, where honestly, I just, one day it hit me like, I think I want to kind of up my game. I want to do something different. I'm tired of humping a M60 machine gun through the jungles of Hawaii and getting bitten by centipedes. Like, maybe I can try to do something different. And that's where I was like, I want to go to Ranger School, airborne, and then did that, and ultimately led to the Green Berets. And
Was the path there tricky or filled with hurdles, or was it pretty straight through? And
it was full of hurdles, man.
yeah,
So like, everything's full of hurdles, you know. But they were good hurdles though. They weren't like weird bullshit hurdles. But like, Ranger School, to me, I think I might have broken a record on how long it took me to get through Ranger School. But I had the benefit of being too dumb to quit. But I went through the whole course, got recycled twice. This was in '94 when I started that, almost 30 years ago, which is friggin' amazing. But I went to the Derby, then to desert. They had a desert phase then. Recycled desert, went to mountains, recycled mountains, went to Florida, and then failed out of the whole course.
Wow.
And man, I was friggin' devastated by that. But me being kind of happy-go-lucky guy, I just went back to Hawaii with my tail between my legs and just said, I need to go back. And I went back, not long, like 2 months later, and then I went straight through the whole thing, with 72 days.
Yeah.
And the total time, I think, was like 200 and something days. My
remember-
mom didn't recognize me.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask, how many pounds or how much weight you lost?
I weighed like 170, I think, when I graduated, and I'm usually a comfortable 210.
Wow.
I'm tall, so I probably lost 30 or 40 pounds. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's actually worse to go straight through because when you recycle, you get to eat a little bit without as much strenuousness in between when you're waiting for the next.
It's like a break almost.
So it's almost like a break. So yeah, I went, but I didn't even recover fully from the first round before I went back and went straight through.
Yeah.
I was freaking hurting
bet. Yeah.
And I went to airborne school right afterwards.
Did you go from Ranger airborne, then back to your infantry, or did you?
Yep, I went to Ranger School. This is how it works when you come from what's called a leg infantry unit, where you're not airborne yet. So you go to Ranger School, and then if you pass, you get kind of this bonus of being able to go to airborne. Well, that's how they did it back then. Maybe you go to airborne first now, I don't know. But either way, I was in airborne school with a Ranger tab on my shoulder. They call a leg ranger for a while. And so I was stationed in Hawaii, 25th ID, in the 27th Infantry, which is the Wolfhounds, which, by the way, I'm super proud of that. 5 years. The Wolfhounds and the infantry are awesome. But I was, 11 Bravo Infantry, went to Ranger School, then immediately went to Airborne School, and then just came right back to my unit. And I was in my same job. I was in the recon platoon of the 2nd of the 27th Infantry. And but then after that is when I went SF, after getting my Ranger tab. And airborne wings.
And was that a similarly filled with hurdles process, or did you go fairly straight through?
That I went. It was pretty seamless.
Yeah.
Yep, I didn't have any recycles or anything.
Yeah.
Yep, that went fairly well actually.
And where did you go to from after selection? Where was your first duty station after that?
10th Group.
10th Group.
Yep,
So Colorado.
Fort Carson in Colorado. Yeah. So 10th Group has two different locations. They got Stuttgart, Germany, and Fort Carson, Colorado. I went to Carson.
And expectation versus reality when you showed up, what did that look like?
Have 4 dogs, and they've eaten all types of different food. And we recently found Team Dog, I believe this spring. So we've been on it for a year. Seeger was on it first, and Tiller was on it, and then we put the Goldens on it. And I mean, all the dogs eat less food. The dogs' coats are way better. Everything about Team Dog is, I'm very impressed. My dog trainer, Justin Allen, he uses it on all 60 dogs that are there for training. He's tried every single food in the game too, and they just stay super healthy on this Team Dog.
There was a huge expectation mismatch on a couple things. So I was coming from the hardcore infantry. So I was in an infantry battalion. By the way, there are tons of people in the infantry that would outperform half the people in SOF. There's some bad dudes in the infantry, man, believe me. But I was in the scout platoon of the 25th ID's Wolfhound unit, the 227. And everyone on my team was a physical beast. I think our PT score average was 295 or something. Slightly younger people. I was actually pretty young for an SF guy. I think I was only 23 when I went through the Q course. And when I got to my team, there were some older guys on there who were not I was used to. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. They were smarter than me, for sure, way smarter. But I was a little bit shocked by the physical ability of the guys on my team compared to what I was used to in the kind of the younger infantry. And the scout platoons in the infantry are specially selected from their battalion. So you get a little bit higher standard going on there. So that was a little bit of a mismatch. And then our first mission was actually very much not what I expected. And that was the deployment to Bosnia, where we did that mission. So
can you walk us through that? Because that seems to be almost Korean War-like in the scope of the last 30, 40 years of DoD experiences. The Croatia, Balkans, the Eastern European kind of engagements. There were some significant ones, but they're not talked about much or
there were
highlighted.
Yeah. It's actually amazing to me when I think about how long ago that actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of when I joined the Army, how I used to think about Vietnam vets and what they went through. If someone were to think about my Balkans experience, that's kind of how it looks right now. But quick maybe backdrop there is for people that don't know, there was this thing called Yugoslavia, which was basically the union of Yugoslavia means the southern Slavs basically, and in the early 90s, the dictator who kept it all together had died, and the factions of the republics across Yugoslavia finally just imploded. And it started with Slovenia basically said we're out, and then I'm just kind of giving a history here of how did we get there and why were we there. And Slovenia tapped out. The Yugoslav National Army responded a little bit, but it was fairly clean of a break, I guess. But then Croatia said we're out, and that was a big deal. And then soon after that, or almost coincident with it, Bosnia plunged into just total freaking chaos. And a little background. So in Yugoslavia, you have kind of these major powers, I would say, of the Croats and the Serbs, which is a big divide there, and it's a very huge history between each one of them. You've got I think basically if you go way back, by the way, there's a great book called The Balkans that if you're interested, it lays all this out in awesome detail. But, and I'll probably make a few mistakes describing it, but Croatia was once under like the Austro-Hungarian kind of empire, whereas the Serbs side was oppressed or semi-independent within the Ottoman Empire. So you had this divide there for, I don't know how long, centuries, I think, that caused that. But then a really big problem that kind of fed into the Bosnia stuff was the alliances during World War II and the Balkan Wars, and how those, World War I, the Balkan Wars, and World War II really kind of solidified the divide between the Croats and the Serbs. So like Croatia, the independent state of Croatia became like a puppet Nazi state during World War II that became very anti-Serb. And then Serbs had like the Chetniks and all that kind of stuff. And that was a big source of division. And then Yugoslavia was formed after World War II, and tried to bind all those people together who had actually been against each other for forever. And this guy Tito, he was like the president or whatever you want to call it of Yugoslavia. He was kind of the glue that kept all them together with some kind of, let's just say, harsh tactics of keeping those people away from each other. But anyway, the shit boiled over after he died. I forget when he died, but in 91, the whole place, the shit hit the fan, starting with Slovenia. And then Croatia split off, or they declared independence. Then the Yugoslav National Army got broken into pieces based on basically ethnicity, and resources divided up like that. Bosnia still is this kind of weird little place where there's three ethnic groups in there: the Croats, the Serbs, and the Bosnian Muslims. And they just went at it basically mostly Bosnian meaning the Muslims and the Croats against the Serbs, but there was a period where the Croats and the Bosnian Muslims also fought each other. I think in like 93 that happened. And then, man, yeah, it's the Balkans is a mess, man, like the way that it divides things up ethnically. But anyway, we ended up, NATO or whoever intervened in Bosnia, and the Dayton Accords came out. We ended up kind of picking Serbs as the bad guys because there was Srebrenica, like the big massacre, and that's where people get the genocide and ethnic cleansing from. Which, by the way, a lot of Serbs will argue that wasn't a genocide. War crime, yes. Not necessarily a genocide in terms of if you look at like what the Germans did, but that's a big topic of debate over there. Well, not among some people, but not everybody. But I basically lived there for like a year, by the way, and I'll talk to you how we went through that. But all that aside, with any imperfections I might have got in that, we ended up intervening basically against the Bosnian Serbs to stop the fighting and establish essentially this new boundaries, which basically became what's called the Federation and the Republic of Srpska, which is the Serbian enclave. And that's where the fighting stopped, and then the peacekeepers went in. So you remember back then, peacekeeping was kind of a new concept, I think, at that point, and we ended up going in there. All kinds of different units went in there, but the soft units went in and did this mission called the Joint Commissioned Observer Mission, which was essentially, the mission statement was to embed yourself deeply in the local population and essentially collect intelligence for the purpose of situational awareness and like trying to mitigate any flare-ups in these very remote areas of Bosnia. And that's the mission that I got sent on. And by the way, the first time I went over there, we were split team with a SEAL team. So I was co-located with half of a SEAL team. And actually my commander in the house we were in was a SEAL lieutenant. Oh, wow. Actually, so that was kind of weird too. That was a dynamic, there with that. But so the way that mission went down is like, if you take any notion you had of like combat and invert it, and that's what that mission basically was. Like, we're going over there, we're going to rent a house in a village in the economy. And the first village we went to was Bihać, which is in the north, like western, I guess it's kind of northwestern Bosnia. And that's like a Muslim pocket in western Bosnia. And we rented a house. We had, like I said, half a SEAL team and half of my SF team were co-located in the house. And our job was to basically drive around and talk to people. And we reported intelligence basically directly to like NATO command. Like there's almost nothing between us and reporting directly to the command structure. So it was a very strategic, in hindsight, it was actually a super strategic mission. Like we basically were doing human intelligence operations like all over the country. So there was, also I think the British SAS did it before we did. Like a couple tours before ours, the Brits were doing it. I don't remember when that line was broken, but so here I am, man. Just to go back to your reality versus what I found. I'm like, my first deployment as a Green Beret, warrior was to talk to people as a peacekeeper.
Were there any
know?
any dynamic situations where shit started to get kind of squirrely? Or
Yeah, there was a couple where Bosnia is an interesting place, man. Like it's actually the most interesting place I've ever been. There are two things that stuck out to me on that. One of them is really horrific, actually, and the other one was just interesting. So let's do the interesting one first. So like there in our sector there, so me and the SEAL E7, I was an E5 at that time. And my patrol buddy was a SEAL E7. I forgot the guy's name. He's probably retired, way retired by now. But him and I were basically patrol buddies. So we would take off every day in a civilian vehicle with an interpreter in the back and link up with chiefs of police, mayors, farmers, anybody. Just talking to people about what's going on was our job. This one day we drove way out past, way east of Bihać into the Republic of Srpska area there's like a border. This is 1997, by the way. So the war was actually fresh in people's minds. Like the war didn't really end till 95. So there were places there that were, I'm not trying to say that there was like still stuff going on. There wasn't, but there was still like fresh memories. People who were fighting like 18 months before were still, there basically. But we drove out into the Republic of Srpska, the east of this town called Sanski Most, and we went to this police station because that's our job. We would go talk to the police and talk to people. And me, being kind of the dumbass I was at that point, I'm like, I just walk into this police station like nonchalantly. And by the way, we wore no kit at all. All we had were concealed pistols, and our uniforms were sterilized, so we had no rank and no patches. That was like the mission. Like even our own people in the U.S. we were in the Canadian sector actually there, didn't know what rank we were or what unit we were from. So anyway, I walked in there, and there's like 5 or 6 Serbian police guys in there, like they had those weird like purple camouflage uniforms. And they saw me come in. I did have U.S. Army on I had my name tags on, but not any rank. And I could tell those guys saw me come in and they were keyed up, man. Like an American soldier just walked in here. Like, what are we supposed to do? I could tell that they weren't sure what to do because we just bombed them. Like to end the war, we had taken out like Serbian positions in Bosnia. So I'm pretty sure those guys, just reading the room in an instant, I was like, I think these guys might be wondering whether or not, what the hell is this American soldier doing here? What are we supposed to do now? And I kind of like, I could sense that, man. It was tense, dude. Like they grabbed their weapons and like they didn't point them at me, but they were ready to, they were ready to react basically, and I don't blame them actually if you think about it in hindsight. But anyway, what I did is I'm like big happy-go-lucky guy. I just reached out my hand to shake somebody's hand, and I greeted them in like Serbo-Croatian, and they were like calming down, and I ended up having a conversation with them about like why we're here and what we're doing. It ended up going there frequently after that and basically getting drunk with those guys. But like there were moments like that were a little tense, especially, and it makes sense in hindsight completely, the context-wise. Like the Serbian folks, in a lot of cases, weren't sure where we stood because we had done we'd taken out some of their troops and like did military ops against them. So
Right.
And empathetically, I don't blame them for being concerned with a random American, suddenly basically opening up the door and walking in. So that was one interesting one. It wasn't that big of a deal. I'm not trying to exaggerate it, but I'm just saying that was the kind of stuff that went on. Like when you go to these remote places and like some of these folks. The whole story, by the way, of Bosnia is an amazing friggin' story of how fast like shit can go to hell with a lot of the normal people just having no clue what the hell is even going on before like tanks are rolling through their friggin' village.
Did you find that, obviously the police, understandably so, were on edge with your presence there?
Yep.
Did you find that the local civilian population felt similarly? Were they kind of unsure, or were they more welcoming?
No, they were not. They were super welcoming.
Oh, wow.
And I would actually, just my experience being there for roughly a year in total, the Serbs, I actually, you know how people talk about Southern hospitality? Like, that's how the Serbs kind of were. Normal Serbian people were like totally welcoming. Even if they want to tell you how much they think what you did sucks, they're very nice about it. Like they'll bring you in their house and give you a rakia, which is like the traditional drink, slivovitz, and give you some bread and maybe a beer and some water and just hang out. And they're super welcoming people.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the Croats were the same way actually. Not to the extreme, I think maybe Serbs were, or maybe I just had more encounters with Serbs in my time, but I don't know. Honestly, I grew to I really like the Serbs, man. Like they're a super cool people, the idea that like any of those particular folks are like these evil creatures that are kind of branded that way on the news or whatever is total bullshit.
Yeah.
Obviously a few military commanders of like the Bosnian Serb military did some heinous shit, and all the Serbian people actually know that. It doesn't mean they're all bad. Same with the Croats. Like there were Croat commanders too that got indicted for like war crimes, but the Croatian people, man, are friggin' super cool.
Is that the other thing that surprised you that was catastrophic, was the evil shit that they did, or what was the second thing?
Oh, the second thing, that was, maybe there were three then, because that is another one, but it wasn't the one I was thinking of. The one that was really messed up, man, was when me and my SEAL buddy were just eating at a restaurant near this village called Sanski Most, which if you wanted to Google it, it's basically roughly Western Bosnia, semi-central. And we were eating lunch, just like we always do, at some random little place, some little hole-in-the-wall Chavapi joint in Bosnia. And this big black American guy walks in. And we're like, we just didn't think much of it because there's a lot of NGOs in Bosnia. But this guy comes up, he sees us, and you could tell he's like spooked. And he ends up not sitting down or leaving, but he walks over to us and he says, let me guess, Army Special Forces and Navy SEAL. And we were like, because remember, we're not wearing anything, It's not like the SEAL had his Budweiser on there and I was wearing my tabs or whatever. We didn't have any of that. So he guessed that for one thing. And then he said, like, no matter what they tell you about me, I'm not a bad guy. And he said he's writing a book about it. And he left. And we're like, what the hell, what the F was that all about? And like, so we like radioed in, once we could get somewhere we could talk back to our head shed. Like we had like a little ops center in our house kind of thing with a radio. And like, we ended up finding out this guy was like this guy had been involved in the Marine barracks bombing of Beirut.
Wow.
And he was like a basically terrorist on the run. And we were like, holy shit, this guy's basically been hiding out here war zones are a great place for people to hide out, because there's nothing, there's basically no law and order, no accountability. So apparently this guy had been hanging out there in Bosnia for whatever. We never saw him again. I mean, that was kind of a shocker. We were like, holy shit.
Oh.
And of course, him and I were like, my SEAL buddy were like, if we ever see that dude again,
Yeah.
he's going to get taken care of. But we never saw him again.
Wow.
But anyway, that was just one of those things where that was a shocker to me. I'm like, what? Because there was a war there and there was horrible shit that went on, but there were basically dudes like that were hanging out there.
Yeah.
That was kind of just,
Yeah.
a shocker.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was a wild thing,
Do you have any idea if he was ever caught or brought to justice, so to speak? No.
We reported it up, and they told us basically who he was and that there was people looking for him.
Throughout that entire year period was there anything else that you guys did, or was there any kind of closure to the mission, or was it just day to day, putting feelers out, talking to people, reporting it back, and then it got to a certain point where they just said, okay, your deployment's up, you're coming back, and that was it?
It was kind of the latter, basically. We went there, we met with people every day for the whole tour, and just actually the second time I went, though, there was a culminating event that was pretty significant, which I'll talk about. But the first tour, we kind of just did our thing for the whole duration and then went home. We got replaced by a team, and we tapped out and they took over. Basically you go through this motion of introducing your new folks to your, let's just call them your contacts out there, and we just left. Like you said, it was semi-uneventful in terms of leaving. But we made like legitimate friends with people. So there was like hugs and tears into some people when we left. We had built that much rapport with so many people and heard like all their brutal stories of the war and how it affected them. So there was definitely that. Like, I actually feel a very strong connection to that place. I was a young guy then, and those experiences were almost like part of my childhood, man. Like, I know that sounds like cheesy, but there was some deep shit that we talked to people about, and people whose sons were killed, or folks who's watched their parents get executed, out in front of their house, and ran away and escaped. Just crazy stories that you can't even imagine.
Wow.
that people live through. But the second time we went was in '99. And another history lesson is in '99, people might remember what happened with Serbia and Kosovo and NATO. So we were actually in eastern Bosnia on the second time, living in a town called Brčko. And that was when the NATO started bombing Serbia because of basically, long story short, what was going on in Kosovo, where the Albanian insurgency and all that kind of stuff was going on. And a huge event that happened was when it was almost an international, we thought World War III was going to start again in Bosnia at that point, or Yugoslavia. The Russians were in Bosnia. They were in and around this town called Ugljevik on the eastern side of Bosnia. And if you Google this was a serious event when the Russians actually rolled from Bosnia into Serbia, as you know, you could almost say in defiance of the NATO bombings of Serbia, because the Serbs and the Russians have really good ties. You know, there's kind of you could just say there's a natural affinity between them. I think at least Serbs would agree with that statement. So they rolled in, and we got derailed off of our Joint Commission Observer build rapport mission, and we got put on this thing that we lovingly all called Operation Vodka Chaser, which was we were basically keeping an eye on the Russians as they went into Bosnia. So they were like staged on the border of Bosnia to go into Serbia. And like we went, it was you could call it like a modern day recon mission, where it's like our mission was go see where the Russians are crossing, how many are crossing at what points, and basic shit, you know. But we did that from driving a civilian vehicle, you know, just down the road until we ran into like the convoy of Russians. You know what I mean? 'Cause it's not like we were at war with the Russians or something. So we ended up. There was a couple freaky moments on that one, where one time me and just one other dude, who an SF guy this time, we didn't have SEALs with us on that second time, where it was just me and him, and he had gone to the Serbo-Croatian like language school, so he had a little knowledge of it, and him and I drove way out in the middle of nowhere in northeastern Bosnia, and because there was, I don't know, we had some information that we needed to go look up there to see if Russians were crossing up there or whatever. And we ended up finding a spot where we had a Bosnian Serb like army outpost, and then a Serbian army outpost like right across the river from each other. I think it's the Drina River up there. And basically at that point, this was like March, April or something, 99. I think we were like basically at war with Serbia. So, or at least, I think they would have thought we were, at least. So we rolled up to this place, and we realized that there are actually Serbs from Serbia hanging out with the Bosnian Serbs in Bosnia. And when we, kind of like the police station incident, when we rolled up and we got out of the car, dudes started like standing up and like running for their kit. And we were like, holy shit, we're out of here. So we jumped back in the vehicle and hauled ass, but nothing really happened. But there was that kind of shit going on when that went down along that eastern border. We also had a house, not our house, got attacked by, they're not actually sure who did it, but this house in Zvornik, Bosnia, was attacked by somebody with like an RPG attack on their house. Because remember, we were just living in rental houses, like no bases.
Was anyone killed from that?
Nobody was injured miraculously.
Oh.
You know? There's some other incident too, where somebody like got the radio taken by the Serbs or some shit. I don't remember, but it was a little touchy. But then the thing with the Russians was really kind of funny, and it leads into the Kosovo journey that I went on. That is really almost, especially if you look at nowadays, it's super weird, but.
Hey folks, let me tell you that drinking and driving is a decision that will change your entire world. Things will never be the same once you get a DUI, because legal fees and time in court are just the beginning. Getting into a crash is another way your world could be irreversibly changed after drinking and driving. Your vehicle may not be the only thing that gets damaged in that crash. You could face a life-altering injury or even death. But you're not the only one who could face those consequences. Your decision to drink and drive could permanently change someone else's world. Whether you injure them or leave their loved ones grieving, the next time you're out drinking, call a ride share, a taxi, a sober friend, or a designated sober driver. Always plan for a safe ride home. The only decision that will change your world for the better is the decision to call for a sober ride. It's never worth it to drive drunk. Do not risk it. Drive sober or get pulled over. paid for by NHTSA.
The Russians were on the road, basically sitting there for like days, waiting, apparently just waiting for the word from somebody to go into Serbia. I mean, and they're just kind of staged in a big convoy. And we would just go up and like park behind them because there was nowhere to really, see what's going on. So in one particular case, we just pulled up there and parked on the side of the road, and this huge Russian convoy, probably hundreds of Russian soldiers just walking around. And this one dude comes up and just asks, one Russian guy asks us for cigarettes. And of course we hand him cigarettes. A couple guys on our team could speak Russian a little bit. This guy knew a couple words of English, and we ended up talking to this guy for a little bit. At that point, we became the source of cigarettes for the Russian guys who were waiting to go into Serbia. It was just kind of a weird thing, man, especially after, my whole basic training and stuff was all about Russia's our enemy, which for some reason we love keeping that dream alive. I don't get it to this day, but we were hanging out with those guys. I think we brought them pizza a couple times, and we ended up just sitting there waiting. And then one day, finally, they got the word and they headed into Serbia. And that was a pretty eventful thing. Operation Vodka Chaser was what our commander called it. He was a funny guy, but yeah. So that was kind of, there were other cool things in Bosnia that were just kind of wacky stuff, but it's all really minute, just interactions with people. I played with a band, a Bosnian Serb band, in a bar one night in Birchko. I think we played Johnny Be Good or something.
Oh, that's cool.
There's the big gringo in here playing the guitar. This is awesome. So I got a concealed pistol. I'm wearing my BDUs, and I'm got a guitar strapped on me, jamming out rock and roll in
Marty McFly style.
In some bar, and stuff like that, man. I was amazed by the people of that place, and the difference between you could just say the situation as advertised and the situation on the ground. It's just not what it.
I feel like even nothing's changed. That it's always been that way. And as we sit here talking today, whether it's Israel and Gaza or Ukraine and Russia, is that what's fed to us via state media and mainstream media is actually quite different than what the reality on the ground is. I'm curious. How did that deployment end for you to ultimately come back?
Yep, it pretty much culminated with the Russians rolling into Bosnia, and not because of that, but it just happened to coincide with the end of our tour.
Were you replaced?
Yep, we were replaced by guys from third group, I think, on that round. But replaced for the same mission.
Do you know how long we kept soft forces in that capacity in that area?
Actually,
how much longer?
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I didn't keep track of it. By the way, I'm one of those guys that when I got out, I got way out.
Yeah, totally removed.
I went down a very totally different path, and I don't know. I'm just an introverted guy. I don't really stay up to date on stuff. But even back then, I don't remember how long we did that mission. But it was an awesome. At the time, I didn't like it because that wasn't the warrior shit that I really wanted to do when I was 25 years old.
Right.
But it was. Now, when I look back on it, it was an awesomely meaningful experience. Just being embedded with those people, man, from all the ethnic groups.
Probably one that you wish you had taken more advantage of while you were there.
That's right, man. Yeah, one of my biggest regrets is not learning Serbo-Croatian.
Yeah.
I was totally immersed in their basically society for about a year, and I didn't learn the language. It's really, really freaking stupid, actually. I should have grabbed a book and got a basic understanding, and I could have just practiced it a little bit and come out pretty good on it.
All right, so at that point, you'd done 2 deployments to that region. You come home, and between then and 9/11, were you just home training?
No, we did a major deployment to Kosovo, and then 9/11 happened right after that.
Was the Kosovo deployment, were there any combat experiences or anything?
There was a brief combat experience there where actually some folks on my team, including me, actually got a RCOM with V device on this joint Russian operation we did.
Can you walk us through that?
Kosovo was amazing, man. Our mission was to embed with the Russian military. The mission was called the Russian Liaison Team, and it's almost surreal to think about it from nowadays. Of like, our job was to essentially attach ourselves to the Russian military and jointly patrol the border with them. It was a peacekeeping type mission, but it had kind of a coin counterinsurgency kind of play to it just because of the situation there. So quick background, if you don't mind, like on Kosovo, like in general. Kosovo was a province of Serbia, basically. And there was an Albanian insurgent group called the Kosovo Liberation Army. They basically, they created an insurgency and ultimately at this point they've declared like independence a while ago and all that. But when the insurgency happened, of course, the Serbian military responded, and then let's just say NATO didn't like how they responded. Let's put it that way, because they did do some heavy-handed shit and it was ugly. Let's put it that way. And NATO bombed the living shit out of Serbia. Peacekeepers went into Kosovo. And the KLA kind of went away. That's the insurgent group, the Albanians. But around 2001, another smaller insurgent group called the UCPMB kind of spun up in this DMZ that NATO established around Kosovo. And you remember back to the vodka chaser when the Russians came in. The Russians came in and they actually took a sector of Kosovo as a peacekeeping force. But there were other nations that took like areas of Kosovo. So you have this patchwork of sectors kind of owned by peacekeepers from different countries. And that's how, that's where the mission, the Russian liaison team came in, is that there needed to be a conduit from the Russian sector into the, let's just say the NATO larger mission structure or whatever. That's my take on it, basically, on the strategic level. But so our thing was, you're going to Kosovo, you're the Russian liaison team, you're going to live in a rental house, again, in this tiny little village called Kamenica, which is up in the northwestern part of Bosnia, right in the middle of the Russian sector. We're going to essentially embed with the Russians and do patrols with them every day. And then report back essentially what we're doing to NATO, because that's we were like the comms of what is going on. But the Russians really ran the show, though. It was their sector. We weren't allowed to do any unilateral operations within that sector. We were basically along for the ride with the Russian military.
Which, kind of to your point, that's hard to even grasp in today's day that our special operations forces would be put in a position like that. Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah.
There's another one of those expectation breakers, by the way, is or not necessarily expectation, but just it's surprising on a human level what went on, and I'll get into that in a second. But so there was Russian units there. I don't know. There was a Russian brigade or something there. I don't know how many there were. But we ended up kind of establishing really good rapport with them. My captain spoke Russian pretty much fluently. He went to DLI for Russian before going SF. He was an intel guy. So he was basically fluent in Russian, which was a massive accelerator to rapport with that. By the way, Green Berets pride themselves on rapport building. That's our DNA as Green Berets, is to be able to go in anywhere, build rapport with the natives, and be able to conduct operations with them. So we were the perfect fit for this kind of mission. So, and we did just that. We did the SF thing. We went in there, we linked up with the Russians, and we built rapport. I think it's funny, towards the end of the tour, I think my captain told us that he'd been invited to meetings where he pretty sure they were talking about Russian classified shit and forgot he was in the room because that's how embedded he was into their whole operation. He's probably, I'm exaggerating a little, but That's some of the things he was talking about. He's not a spy, don't worry. But like, anyway, but we ended up like kind of fostering the most rapport with this one group of VDV guys. I forget what VDV is in Russian, but it's the Russian Airborne, basically. And it was a particular unit, apparently, that is like a Spetsnaz umbrella unit, which I think the structure of like Spetsnaz isn't like one unit, I don't think. In Russian military structure, it's kind of like an umbrella thing, I think.
So like SOCOM for the
it might even be like SOF
yeah.
is like Spetsnaz. And then certain units just have functional roles. But, I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. And these guys were basically some VDV Spetsnaz variant. And they were like 6 or 8, maybe 10 guys that we went out on patrol with basically every day.
What was your impression of them, generally speaking, like soldier caliber wise?
Yeah, I thought they were awesome. Like
very formidable and
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, they were well trained. They were disciplined. They had the Russians are simple. Like they don't have a bunch of sexy equipment and shit, but their weapons were good. They had AK-74s. I think maybe every now and then you'd see a guy with like a PKM or something, but generally speaking, they had good weapons and equipment. They kept their shit clean. They acted like we did, giving each other shit, freaking a bunch of big, strong dudes. Like if they spoke English, and you watch them for an hour, just how they do shit, it'd be hard to distinguish them from like a SEAL team. I'll bet.
Yeah.
They just are a bunch of guys who are a kind of a cut above the rest in their military, and they were highly trained, kick-ass dudes. I mean, and they were formidable. There was one dude who was like a boxer or something, man. And he has like his knuckle. I guess he hit the heavy bag with no gloves ever, like in his life. But his hands were like these massive, calloused. I don't know. I just remember his hands for some reason. And he was just like 6'3", 220-pound beast of a dude, man. And like that's kind of how those guys were. Yeah. A lot of them were like Chechnya veterans too.
Yeah.
So these guys had done some shit in Chechnya that was like badass. Like their captain, who we used to call Shaky, because he smoked. He chain smoked, and he was always kind of shaky. He had apparently like E&E'd out of like Chechnya by foot for like 100 miles through like enemy territory or something, and got like the Russian equivalent of the Medal of Honor or some really high. I mean, this guy was a badass. They were badasses, man. I'm not trying to worship them or something. I'm just saying, like, they are military, proud to serve their country, and they were trying to kick ass, man. And like, we patrol those guys every day. Like, we'd roll out with them. Sometimes we'd just be sitting on top of their vehicles. I don't know if you know how Russians tend to drive around a lot, just sitting on top of their vehicles, and like those. Every day, there's basically let's talk about a day in the life of that mission. Maybe is how it went down. Our mission was to patrol that sector, which is a pretty big chunk of land. Every morning, usually the Russians would roll up alongside our house with their vehicles, which were usually like a BMP or a BTR, usually a BTR, I think. That's the BTRs are the 6-wheeled dealios, like those 6-wheel personnel, whatever carriers. It's got like a 20 millimeter or something on the front of it. I don't remember, man. I don't keep track of it. It's all in my head, but like they'd roll up in that, they'd get out, we might shoot the shit for a while, load up some water or something. And then we'd roll out behind them or in front of them with we had up armored Humvees. And me being like the 18 Bravo on the team, that's the weapons guy. I was usually sitting in the turret of the Humvee, or I would just jump on the back of the Russian vehicle and drive around on top of the vehicle with the Russians. Either way, and different dudes did that interchangeably. And we would roll out, man. We would drive around the border and just kind of you could call it presence patrol, the area. Every now and then we'd see like these Albanian insurgent guys off in the distance in that DMZ. Oftentimes we didn't see anything. We'd run into people and talk to them and ask them shit. And the one interesting thing about the Russians that I was amazed by is they were freaking awesome at like vehicle operations, like vehicle recovery, like using winches. If I had one like notable thing about the Russians, it's they're super resourceful with little of nothing. Simple shit, they can make stuff happen. Like they're just they're very resourceful. They remind me of my actual like the old Yankee roots actually. Like give me a couple things and I'll make some shit happen. Like
full blown MacGyver.
Yeah, they're kind of like using winches, and they used to strap like they had logs, like just ratchet strapped to the side of their vehicles, and they would use these logs as like leverage points and shit to like, they could get a vehicle out of anything, man. And our vehicle got stuck a lot, man. Like the Humvees could not traverse that terrain like their like BMP did, or sometimes they ran with these huge trucks called like Ural trucks, which apparently is some big Russian, it's like a deuce and a half kind of thing. That thing, they would tow us out and other people out, with that thing as like a beast, man. And that thing is like the most primitive machine you could imagine. Like but it worked every time. That's kind of like, you get a little glimpse of Russian kind of mentality engineering when you hang out with the Russians all day for 6 months, you know what I mean? But like the terrain up there was like, people that like four-wheeling and shit would love Kosovo, because basically all through those mountains is nothing but four-wheeling through mud. And it was like mud season when we were there, like winter, spring, and then early summer. So a day in the life was roll out with the Russians. At some point we would stop and friggin' break bread, try some Russian MREs, which are friggin' disgusting. And trade some stuff. And of course, they had vodka everywhere they go all the time. So,
was there a nastiest Russian MRE that you remember?
There was one thing they gave me that was in a can of some kind that reminded me like of a sea ration. That was like this fishy type stuff, man. It was freaking heinous. That's the only one I ever tried. And from that point on, I'd stick with our MREs. But we'd give them MREs too, But we were just to hang out. Like we'd go up on the top of like a hilltop and take a break for like lunch and chill out.
Yeah. Were there ever any engagements with any of the Albanian insurgents?
Yeah. There was one engagement that was pretty, it was it was the first time in my career in the military that I had bullets go past me and return some fire. And it was this time. So what happened was, on a normal everyday patrol, we encountered this dude walking down the road, and he had an Albanian guy and he had like a military belt around his waist. So we stopped and asked him what's up, and the Russians asked him what's going on, and the Russians found him basically suspicious. Let's put it that way. So they ended up hauling him. A lot of the stuff I didn't see, and they hauled him back to their compound or whatever. And that guy apparently gave them some intel of there being like an encampment up along the border, like just right on top of where that DMZ is, which, by the way, we weren't allowed to go in the DMZ by like the ROE up there, rules of engagement.
Did the Russians like turn the screws on this guy and that's why he gave it up? Do you know?
I don't know. I didn't see it, but it's possible.
Probably.
It's possible, yeah. And I also think that the Russians had Serbs with them, probably, at least collaborating with them, which, that would be like us going somewhere and the British were also there and we're going to collaborate. You got the Serbs and the Russians right there.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were talking. So, I don't know what happened. I'm speculating on that, but I'm just saying. So long story short, it was the Russians are like, we're rolling on this. We're going to go investigate this and see what's going on. So we jump in our Humvees. We got 2 Humvees, and then we got the Russian. I don't remember if it was a BTR or a BMP in trail, and we headed out for this thing, and we beelined up to this spot, and so we come rolling up through this. This is all super rural, woods and like rolling fields, kind of like a pastoral. Think of like a pastoral view of like northern New England. That's kind of what it looks like in Kosovo. And there was this thin trail going up into the woodline, and that is basically where this place was that apparently this guy had like pointed out on the map to the Russians. And we head up there, and we stopped, I don't know, a couple 100 meters short of going in there because we weren't sure if it was in the buffer zone, because we weren't supposed to go in it. But based on our maps and what Russians said, apparently, I wasn't involved in that. My captain's down there speaking Russian. They're looking at maps and shit. And we decided we're gonna go. We can go a little further before we're in the buffer zone. So anyway, we headed up the hill and we come up over the rise. I was actually in the lead vehicle. I was behind a Mark 19, machine gun in the turret of our Humvee. My team sergeant was down in the. Was he driving? I think he was driving. And whatever. We roll up over the rise on this little dirt path, and there's a dude in camouflage. Like, you ever seen the Swiss camouflage? It's kind of got red blotches in it.
Yeah.
He's wearing that, and he's got a beret on his head, and he's holding an AK. Really young guy. He couldn't have been more than like 18 or 20 years old. And we came up over that rise, and his eyes got like this friggin' big, and it was one of these UCPMB guys. He didn't do anything like to shoot at us or anything, but guy jumped out of my vehicle and basically grabbed that guy's weapon. There was this is almost humorous, even though it was kind of messed up, but there was a gate that they had put across the road, and with a sign on it where they had kind of crudely painted "Stop UCPMB," which I don't know if they were like taxing people or something when they go through there. I don't know, but my team sergeant, I think it was, basically ripped the sign off of that thing, and it was just like a little wooden thing across the road, like a little thing, and we moved that out of the way, and we drove up into this. We basically drove up into this little encampment. And when we went, basically it was like crossing from the edge of a field into the woodline when we went into this trail through that gate. And I was keyed up at that point. I'm like, holy shit, we're basically going into call it a base camp of these Albanian insurgent guys. It was totally against their like strategic interest to do anything bad to an American. But still, you never know. So we went in there, and now we're in like this super thick, almost like a hemlock evergreen like forest. I don't know if it was hemlock. I don't remember. It might have been spruce or something, but whatever. We go rolling in there, maybe only a couple 100 feet, if that. And at that point, I start seeing like there was a car like camouflaged into the trees. Like deliberately camouflaged, and there was a tent with camouflage over it, and there were like these little spots where you could tell people were cooking food and camping out inside there. And I don't know, we were probably sitting there 30 seconds, and somebody opened fire on us basically, and bullets flew like past me. I'm not trying to exaggerate it and make it out to be something huge, but somebody was firing, let's just say, in our general direction through the woodline. So me being, who I am or whatever, I friggin' returned fire with the Mark 19 into where I thought it was coming from. Meanwhile, and just before that happened, I forgot to mention, like when we first drove in, the Russians, the VDV guys, basically, they're, again, I'm talking to my captain in Russian. They basically became like a flanking element, and we kind of became like a supporting type element. Whether we did that deliberately or not, I don't know 100%, but that's kind of how it worked out. So the Russians flanked left while we kind of went in, let's just say straight, you know what I'm saying? And so fire broke out, and I returned fire with a Mark 19. Another guy on my team and a couple guys also kind of did a little bit of a spray. I don't think we fired for more than 15 seconds. And my captain called ceasefire, or my team sergeant did. And basically, man, the friggin' whole woods looked like it was smoking from the Mark 19, you know. And I'm getting like keyed up thinking about it, man. It was intense. It was a little intense moment. It was. I actually am very careful not to exaggerate shit, man. Like, I'm not trying to be some kind of bullshit guy, but like, I was scared shitless, and like, because that's the first time I'd ever heard rounds like fired, you know. But anyway, the Russians flanked. Fire went off. Ceasefire. And then the Russians start bringing dudes back. And then my team sergeant said, let's basically secure this place. You know, so I jumped actually out of the turret down. I got down out of the turret, and I grabbed a 240 machine gun that we kept inside the vehicle. And I went out kind of on the front perimeter of that kind of compound. It was literally an encampment, probably, I don't know, man, 150 feet by 150 feet. You know, and I went out kind of to what I thought was the edge of it with the 240 and just kind of pulled security, as they say. And the Russians brought in a couple guys that they basically captured, these guys, and we ended up, you know, team sergeant called us back in. We jumped in the vehicles and we hauled those guys back to the Russian compound.
Do you know if
it was intense.
If you guys killed any of their guys?
We don't. We wounded some, and I don't know who wounded who or whatever. But yeah, there were dudes. In fact, it was one of the things that kind of shocked me was seeing dudes bleeding that the Russians were bringing back in.
Yeah. Wow.
And like that was my first time doing that.
Yeah, the old cherry pop.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah.
Now, what's weird about it, though, man, is I have a tendency to think that I have a feeling that whoever was firing at us didn't realize we were Americans.
Right.
I think that is, in hindsight, you know what I'm saying?
Which is understandable because there's only a few of you, right?
Yeah, and there was a Russian vehicle right there, so maybe they saw the Russian vehicle, and maybe Russians and Serbs have similar vehicles, and maybe that's why they fired. I've been thinking about this for 30 years, man, 25 years. This was 2001. Yeah. And I'm like, why did they fire?
Yeah.
You know, I'm always wondering, I overthink stuff too much, man.
Yeah.
It's the philosophy shit probably.
Yeah.
But anyway, that went down. It was intense. I think about that day all the time, man. And you know, how it got to be that. Oh, one other thing, man, that was part of my response why I returned fire and why I was scared shitless was about a month before, one of the Russians was actually killed on a patrol where they weren't with us, they were just on their own. And if you Googled it, I think you could probably find it from the old news back then where a Russian was killed on a patrol in Kosovo. Mm-hmm. And so in my mind, in our team's mind, we were like, these guys might go after us. You know, they went after the Russians. If we're with the Russians, we could be, you know, we kind of upped our threat posture, let's put it that way, after that happened. So I was keyed up just going in there at that moment. I'm like, a Russian got popped in the head and killed. And I remember the Russians carrying him to the helicopter that night when we evac'd the guy. That was a big deal too, man.
Yeah.
Russian gets killed. We spun up and went out to help them get air support, and we ended up having a Black Hawk come in and evac their guy.
Wow.
Who was dead, man. Like they were carrying him to the I'll never forget it, man. Carrying him to the chopper. Just his friggin' half his head was missing on the back of his head.
Wow.
And like, but later on, like we learned that might have been like some kind of accidental discharge or even possibly like a suicide. and it wasn't what we thought it was.
Wow.
So yeah, man, there was some dynamics like that that are.
And so that was in 01. You guys come home from that.
Yep.
Prior to 9/11.
Yep, that was just before 9/11. We came home. I think we came home in August of 2001.
Okay. All right. So you got back from Kosovo just before 9/11, and it's interesting. Your career comparative to a lot of other special operations guys on here that either started post 9/11 or maybe right before, or even if they did things before, it was very relative to Middle East CENTCOM.
Yep.
You having such a kind of a disparate difference, spending so much time in Kosovo and working with Russian forces and being in a very different operational environment, getting home right before 9/11, 9/11 kicks off. One, I'm curious, can you walk us through when you heard about 9/11 and how that directly impacted your unit? And then operationally kind of walk us through your time there, having spent time in the early years of the GWOT.
Yeah. So it was.
All right, look, half-ass sleep equals half-ass results. You can train like a beast, eat clean, hit the cold plunge, but if you're overheating in bed, none of it matters. Quality sleep isn't always about how long you sleep, but how well you sleep. And science tells us temperature plays a massive role in that. Quality sleep is a non-negotiable. Recovery doesn't happen in the gym, it happens when you're dead asleep. But if you're tossing, turning, and sweating, you're going to wreck your performance. The chili pad isn't just for professional athletes or special operations, it's for anyone who wants to sleep hard and recover harder. You set your exact sleep temp anywhere from 55 degrees to 115 degrees and let the chili pad do the rest. It's built for performance. You can set it cold as hell at night, and then you can let it gently warm you up in the morning so you wake up ready to go. No alarms, no thermostat fights with your spouse. They sent me one, I tried it, and now it's part of my nightly kit. I'm getting deeper sleep, no night sweats, and I wake up sharp. Visit www.sleep.me/micdrop to get 20% off your chili pad with code MICDROP, all caps, all one word. That's free shipping, free returns, and a 30-night sleep trial to test it for yourself. Again, that's www.sleep.me/micdrop. Sleep cooler, recover faster, perform better.
I'm a SODIC grad, which I think they just call Special Forces Sniper School or something now. But I was in sniper sustainment training, and we were basically packing out, getting ready to go out for the morning in Colorado to shoot, just on a normal day on the range. And while we were kind of swabbing bores and packing up, the TV was up on the wall in the corner in the sniper hooch there in 10th Group, and we saw it on the news. That one of the towers hit, and then the next one, and we were like, probably like every other special ops guy, that moment was, we want to go kill whoever just did that. Please send us immediately. To the point where some of us were like, maybe sniper sustainment should be over, and we need to go back to our team room and wait for orders. I mean, we were immediately basically just wanting to go, man. And we ended up kind of calming down though and continued training. But that's how 9/11 happened for me.
How much longer were you at that course?
I think the sustainment courses used to be like 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
I don't remember. But
So like a week or two?
I think we were another week or something.
Yeah.
And it was right there local anyway, know. So, but that led into, okay, what's going to happen? And, the adrenaline wore off after a few days, and I guess we realized that 5th Group is going to be the ones who actually go for the initial Afghanistan stuff. And of course, we were insanely jealous. Mm-hmm. And we were, because people got to realize, when you're a Green Beret or a Navy SEAL or whatever, and shit like that goes down, that's like an NFL player seeing a shot at the Super Bowl in front of them. You know what I mean? You don't become a Green Beret so you can not go do something like that. And
to me, it's like, for the football reference, it's making it to the conference championship and not going to the Super Bowl.
Exactly. I mean, a Green Beret that doesn't see war is like a guy who never was allowed to play in a game.
Yeah.
You know, but so anyway, we kind of had that mentality. I know I did for sure, and we also were, you know, very jealous of fifth group guys, especially when we saw them riding horseback, like on the news, and doing the kind of pure SF mission of unconventional warfare with the Northern Alliance and all that stuff. But little did I know that we would have our chance too. But for us on my team, it was Iraq coming up very quickly.
Yeah.
We did do one mission after 9/11. This was in like January of 2002, where we went to Kyrgyzstan and trained the Kyrgyz military in some special ops, like counterterrorism stuff. But
Did you get a goat grab under your belt doing that?
a what?
A goat grab?
I'm afraid to ask what that might be.
But yeah, it's nothing sexual, which that's a fair question, given the region.
We had fat back sheep stew. I will tell you that from the Kyrgyz military.
Well, similar. It's a goat roast with a bunch of sides like a goat buffet, but using your hands and they're.
Yeah, probably. I never heard it called that, I guess,
Yeah.
but we
had some in Saudi and Kuwait leading up to going into Iraq.
yeah. But Kyrgyzstan, we had mostly Russian type food, really. And but anyway, we went there. It was semi-uneventful. It was basically a FID mission.
Yeah.
To train them, and we didn't see any. And again, we were dying to please put us in, coach, and let us win. But as soon as we got back from that, it actually happened, where we came down on what would be one of definitely the pinnacle of my time in Special Forces, and one of the biggest ops ever, I think, in the history of
What's interesting.
the Green Berets, actually, I think.
Yeah, well, that's another thing we have in common is not just the shirts or guitar, but that I was on the oil platform mission, which was the largest naval special warfare mission in its history, and continues to be to this day. But in terms of numbers of operators at once, it was all of SEAL Team 3, 220 some odd guys. But I am curious, being kind of at that same point in my career as you were then, the invasion happened in March of 2003.
Yep.
We had grumblings of, or whispers, rumor mill that Iraq was looking like it was probably going to happen like October, November of 2002. Was that similar? Like it was kind of a, hey, just so you know, this is probably going to happen. Be ready. Get your desert shit.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, we knew way before those time frames.
Really?
That we were going to go
To Iraq.
in Iraq. Yeah, we had
wow.
people in Iraq in October,
Oh, okay.
I believe. So we have pilot team guys in there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with SF's pilot teams, and there used to be the Nile teams and stuff.
No, I've never heard of them.
Northern Iraq liaison elements. I don't know if those are actually related, but basically we had folks in there with the CIA pretty early. My team, I always tell people, I think my team, I was on ODA 081, which is the first team in Bravo Company, 3rd Battalion, 10th Group. Now they number them different. I don't know how they number them. I've never asked what the new numbering scheme is, but we were ODA 081. And our mission, we had two things happen to us that were kind of amazing that we got to do them. The first one was this operation called the Advanced Force Operations. That's where we infilled into Iraq from Turkey in January of 2003.
So they let you guys through there, because that was a big contingent conventionally, was right at the last second before the invasion. They told was it the 3rd Armored Division, no, you can't come through Turkey and you're going to have to go all the fucking way around. But they let you guys.
Yeah, so to this day, I'm not sure how we got in to Iraq. Whether, I'll tell you this, we were driving rental cars.
Well, that's probably how.
And we were wearing civilian clothes, and we had all of our shit hidden in the vehicles.
Wow.
And we drove for 27 hours on the infill into Iraq on the AFO mission.
What rental cars?
We just rented them from.
What kind of cars?
Oh yeah, I was driving in a Jeep Grand Cherokee that smelled like cigarette smoke. Another guy on my team, we were laughing at this one. It was basically like a lowrider pickup with tinted windows.
Fucking Lowrider magazine edition.
So it was hilarious, man. I mean, it wasn't that decked out. It didn't have hydros on it and stuff.
No 22 fucking.
But we were
Dayton
joking
deep
about
dish
that shit,
rims.
of course.
Yeah.
And then there was another car too, and then I think we were like 5 or 6 cars total because there were 2 different teams that went in there, if I remember correctly. But I was in the Grand Cherokee, and we drove from. But by the way, I only talk about things that made it through the pre-publication review of my book. Just so you know on this part, and things were redacted. Let's put it that way.
That you're going to now disclose on this show.
Yeah, no, I'm not. But anyway, where we left from in Turkey, we drove rental cars for 27 hours straight. But we went right through Haber Gate, and we went through it, which seemed like in a weird way. We had nobody checked our shit. We went through, and then we drove in there. It was very nerve-wracking because we didn't know what was going on. I had my pistol like under my thigh on the seat. I was driving actually at that point. And we got in there and we kind of parked inside like where the gate's almost like a little compound, the border crossing. We hung out there for a second until, and this is me again. I'm an 18 Bravo, knuckle dragger on the team basically. My captain's the one kind of really orchestrating let's call it the handoff here, where we cross the border and link up with the Kurds. This was the KDP Kurds. There's 2 Kurds, by the way, roughly. There's the KDP and the PUK at that time. I think there's different ones now, maybe. But our mission on my team was to go all the way to the PUK, which was way down on the northeastern side of Iraq, in northern Iraq. Just so you know, there's northern Iraq at that time. It's got half of it is KDP, the other's PUK, and then there's this kind of line called the Green Line, which is where Iraq's forward line of troops is against the Kurdish people of northern Iraq. Just big picture, that's how it's kind of laid out right there. And then in the corner of the PUK sector were 3 terrorist groups operating, which is going to be, that was, the biggest event of my life, basically. I'm going to talk about going after those guys. But on the initial infill on this advanced force operations, we went over the border in rental cars dressed basically similarly to how I am right now, with a concealed pistol and all of our other shit hidden in the back. And we kind of got shuttled through there, and then we linked up with the Kurds and a couple of guys from our pilot team and a couple CIA guys. And at that point, we drove we linked up with them. There were a few man hugs exchanged because we know some of those pilot team guys from back. One of them used to be on our team. You know how shit goes and that. So we link up and then we just head out. And the Kurds tell us that we can't drive along near the Green Line because the Iraqis already know we're there, is what they said. And we don't want to be within missile range of our route. So they took us on this kind of convoluted route up through the mountains of northern Iraq, which usually when people think of Iraq, they don't think of snow-capped mountains and massive green expanses of hillside. And it's almost like the Rocky Mountains in that part of Iraq. And believe it or not, we ended up driving for another, I don't know how many hours, 10 hours, and it was snowing sideways, like whiteout conditions when we're driving through this thing. And we've literally got a Kurdish dude walking in front of our vehicle in the snow to kind of walk us up some of these places we drove through. It was I couldn't believe it, And then we ended up stopping at this place for the night. I don't even know where it was. It's somewhere it was somewhere in the KDP's area of northern Iraq, and we basically stayed the night, which was actually only like 3 or 4 hours. And at that point, we left the 2nd Battalion, 10th Group guys there because they were going to stay with the KDP Kurds and do their stuff there. By the way, our mission for this AFO thing was basically to go in, find where the Kurds are, figure out based on where the Kurds are, where are we going to put all our teams, and then where are all the bad guys, and basically prep an airfield to make sure that our guys can land on the airstrip and get them to where they need to link up with their Kurds. So it's like a very classic unconventional warfare mission that we went on. So anyway, from that place where we stayed the night, we jumped back in the rental cars, got the Kurds leading from the front, and we're driving for another, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours to get to you could call it the border between the KDP and the PUK Kurds. And right there, we had a very tense exchange. It was very intense between the KDP and the PUK Kurds, which are very different. And there's a whole friggin' huge history of those Kurdish factions. They go back a long ways. But to make a long story short, like KDP kind of handed us off to the PUK, and then our 3rd Battalion pilot team linked up with us, and more man hugs, and then we went on our way to this place called Kuala, which is like a village to the north of Sulaymaniyah. And that's where we kind of set up operations for this advanced force mission. And a day in the life of advanced force operations actually looked similar to this JCO mission of Bosnia that I described, which is drive around, meet with these Kurdish elements, and basically get them on the same page and see what they have, kind of like we call it the unconventional warfare assessment of the guerrilla units that are kind of in your area of operation, and basically produce, the order of battle. That was basically what we did. Produce the intelligence of where all the Kurds are by basically driving around and talking to people. And that's what we did. And some of these drives every day were like 6 or 8 hour drives to try to get out to these factions of the Kurds. And it was some like, I don't know if you're familiar with the SF training pipeline and this thing called Robin Sage. Mm-hmm. It was all this to me was very amazingly similar to like Robin Sage, and when you go through the Q course, you wish you always are going to do something like it, and we got to do it. It was amazing, man. So anyway, that part of the mission was basically, where are the Kurds? Where are we going to put our people? And by the way, let's fix this runway. And we infilled with an Air Force STS guy, actually, who was attached to our team, AFSOC dude. And by the way, AFSOC does not get enough. They don't get enough visibility, man. Those guys are everywhere, and they do awesome shit. But this guy was there for our typical TAC-P related air control stuff, but he was also there to certify this runway. So we basically were contracting Kurdish construction people to rebuild the runway in a Sulaymaniyah West airstrip, and he was going to certify that a C-130 can land on this thing. And that was a big part of our mission, was to do that, and we did it. So bottom line is, on the, I don't know what, well, actually, one more really important aspect that it's going to feed into the big Operation Viking Hammer is, like I said, there's 3 terrorist groups operating in the northeastern side of the PUK sector of Iraq, and it was the Ansar al-Islam, which was the bigger one, and then there to the north of them was the IGK, the Islamic Group of Kurdistan, and then south of Ansar Islam was the Islamic Movement of Kurdistan, the IMK, and they were in a kidney bean shaped little enclave right on the border to Iran. And this place is like nothing any American could imagine. So imagine driving down the road and suddenly someone has a flag raised and a 50 cal machine gun parked in the middle of the road, And you're not allowed to go in there because this is Ansar al-Islam territory. You know what I mean? It's freaking crazy that they were basically operating there blatantly, just carved out into that area. So I didn't do this so much. My sector was more on the western end of our sector, but we were doing a lot of reconnaissance on this Ansar al-Islam guys. So you could say that phase of my time in Iraq ended when we brought in the rest of the Green Berets, basically. And if you Google around this, there was a flight called the Ugly Baby, and I think our commander Charlie Cleveland coined the phrase because, like you said, Turkey wouldn't let us in, or at least they wouldn't let us in if they knew we were going in. But so we had to fly in the rest of the SF guys from Jordan, I think they flew from, over Iraq. So these guys ended up flying like a couple AC-130s, or MC-130s, sorry, over Iraq and landing on these airstrips. The one that we fixed was the one I was on. So on that night, basically of the Ugly Baby, I was in charge of security on the drop zone, not the drop zone, the landing strip. Our Air Force guy was friggin' running around like a chicken with his head cut off, coordinating the shit and talking to him on the radio. My battalion commander, Ken Tovo, was there. And we had basically blocked off the whole area around this place and waiting for these birds to land. And it was a pretty unforgettable moment, man. Like, these guys had been shot up on the way in. Wow. And they friggin' flew in, these birds, and landed them in the pitch black. You know, as Murphy's Law would say, like, right before they came in, some generator went out on the runway. All the lights cut out. And then some Kurd had an accidental discharge with an RPG. So we thought like a missile hit the ground, because we were actually within missile range of Iraq, I think. So we were concerned about that to begin with, of getting rocketed as these planes came in. It didn't happen, but could have. So my Air Force, this Air Force guy should be friggin', I don't even remember his name, but he was like something was going on where the birds couldn't see the runway good enough or something. So he drove out onto the runway all the way to one end, and he was driving like a madman down the runway, like flashing his lights to try to help the pilots or whatever find the runway. Anyway, man, it was dramatic. Apparently, I was mainly focused on security and like blocking off this stuff. But anyway, these birds land, they're shot up. They come down to the end of the runway that I was on, and guys start pouring out the back of the plane and like kissing the ground after this, like, I don't know how many hour flight it was, but they were doing like nap of the earth over all of Iraq to get into northern Iraq from like Jordan. I was glad that we were there before and we didn't have to fly on that flight. But that was the night of the Ugly Baby. And basically, another thing, I forgot to mention this, is like during the AFO thing, the other thing we did was the targeting. You remember the shock and awe concept of 2003? Well, somebody's got to register those targets. And basically it was us and the CIA dudes who were, you know, like lasing targets and sending up coordinates and doing all that.
So you guys actually did all that?
Yep, we did. Yeah, it wasn't just our team. There was other elements in there doing some of that stuff. But yeah, we were basically, this was an interesting thing too. We were like one team with the CIA, like ground branch team that was there. And we operated together on quite a few things, targeting being one of them. Right. Although some of our like normal journeys out to find the Kurds, they didn't go on that stuff, but we did a lot of stuff actually together.
Do you remember, I'm sure there was a range, but kind of a ballpark range of where you guys were at versus the targets you're lasing? Like, how close were you to some of these targets?
In those beginning days, they were pretty far. I would guess almost always at least a kilometer.
Okay.
Which, although in that terrain, a kilometer is not actually that far, but you know. So there were lasing targets for Ansar Islam was a lot different than lasing targets for the Iraqi military. Like the Iraqi military stuff, we were pretty far, like backed off of that green line and kind of registering that kind of stuff. And this is like for the Tomahawk opening attack, not necessarily us calling in like air support. These are like registering strategic targets, I guess you could say, something like that. A little bit different than your average TAC-P, like calling in an airstrike on a tactical op. You know what I mean? These are like more pre-planned strategic stuff. So when we kicked off the war in Iraq, like this initial barrage was what we were collecting.
And then so the shock and awe period's a few days of just constant pounding. From there, where did you guys go, or what did the mission become after?
Yeah, so once, let's see, when did the guys landed on the Ugly Baby, and then I immediately with my team went down to Halabja, which is where the terrorist enclaves were right outside of that, because we were about to take care of that part of the business, as you would say. So, sorry, what was the question on that one?
So the shock and awe was a few day period.
Oh, yeah.
And then that bled over into what was the next phase?
Yeah, so I think once we went to Halabja and the shock and awe happened after we left, after the guys landed, like I said, and then we went down to Halabja. That's when the larger military strike and the war basically started.
Yeah.
At that point. And I was standing on the roof of the Kurdish headquarter building, down there, headquarter building being a overly formal term for what that place was, but like standing on the roof with a bunch of dudes, including the Kurds. My battalion commander was there with me, and something like 60 Tomahawks hit the Ansar Islam and IGK and everything, mountainsides. And there's like massive mountain landscape there. I'll never forget it because you could hear the Tomahawks flying through the air, and you could see some of the Ansar guys who were probably, 2 kilometers from that rooftop, firing tracers up in the air. And I remember the Kurds like laughing about that, like basically saying, "Good luck, jackasses, because you're about to get hammered." So like 60 Tomahawks hit within like, I don't know. Actually, I don't know if it was 60. It would have to be at least 40, 50 Tomahawks hit probably within a span of 20 minutes.
Wow.
It was just brutal, man. Like, and a lot of that targeting had been done by us. Actually, I forgot to mention one of the targeting things was actually pretty awesome, where we...
Look, hard work, discipline, and showing up for the people who count on you, those are values I live by. But not getting solid sleep was wrecking me. Beam sent me their dream powder to try out. I took it because I was ready to fix my sleep. First night, I was out cold. No midnight wake-ups, no groggy morning fog, just real restorative sleep. Dream is packed with clean, science-backed ingredients like reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin. Stuff that actually works together to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up ready to tear into the day. Plus, it tastes great, doesn't leave you with any of that nasty crash or brain fog. So here's the deal. Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount of up to 40% off. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/micdrop and use the code MicDrop, all caps, all one word, at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/MicDrop and use code MicDrop for up to 40% off. Sleep better, wake up stronger, and show up ready for your family, your work, and your country. Because when you're well rested, you're unstoppable. And this country needs more people like that.
The Kurds actually made a deal with like the IGK, the Islamic group of Kurdistan, which is basically another terrorist group up in that area at the time. And they allowed us to go through their lines one day. Like I was in the back of a pickup truck with like a CIA dude and a couple other guys. and we drove into this IGK area. And you're talking about like these are dudes sitting behind like a dishka in a sandbag with like the bandana with the Islamic writing on his head, like ISIS shit, led us through. And you talk about getting some stairs, man.
Yeah.
Like the shit could have hit the fan, but we went in there and we not only did we target Ansar Islam from inside IGK, but we also targeted IGK from inside IGK. And like that was like a couple days before the big barrage, that was some spooky shit, man.
I'll bet.
But okay, once the shock and awe went down, we did a few kind of operations probing Ansar Islam. On one of them, we got in actually serious shit that almost we had a good lesson learned on. So we did what we call dueling mortars for a couple days, where the Kurds brought in all these mortar tubes, and like all the 18 Bravos from the SF company that was there. By the way, this was Charlie Company, 3rd Battalion, 10th Group, plus my team from Bravo 310. That's who was in this area. And basically, we created what we called Franken mortars out of this giant ball of mortars. And then we were doing like harassing attacks on Ansar Islam for a couple days with mortars. We also did kind of like a penetration mission to do like some sniper operations with a Beret 50 cal. And that's the one where we actually did something stupid, where we went in there. We went pretty deep, like inside their lines, like maybe a kilometer or something. And we were, I don't know, 4 or 5 of us. And we ended up getting set up, and we're going to start taking some pot shots at what we thought was kind of a key position. Ansar Islam was basically dug into this whole mountainside. You could think of it like that. There were like pillbox, almost old school pillbox like bunkers set up in the mountains. So we were gonna jack around with one of those that day, and we didn't even get a shot off before we started getting major like machine gun fire from. I don't even know where it was coming from. Probably that position, but it was coming from a couple directions. So we ended up, like me and the dude I was with, Chris, with the 50 cal, ended up having to kind of just slide off the back of this ridge. And remember, this is in like insane mountain terrain. Like you don't think, like erase all your visions of Iraq and like.
More like Afghanistan,
Yeah.
Hindu Kush kind of terrain.
Exactly. Like I've never been to Afghanistan, but from what I've seen, I would say it's closer to that for sure. And we slid off the back of that, and we ended up having to split up with our other group that drove in with us on the truck, because we couldn't get to the truck to get out of there with them. So we ended up like hauling ass down this gulch that was going to lead us back to the Kurdish, basically the Kurdish lines instead of the Ansar lines. And when that happened, like a huge mortar round hit. I don't know, it couldn't have been more than 100 feet from me and the dude. I was basically the spotter. He was the shooter that day for this, what we were going to do. And it like knocked me down like on my knee. We didn't get hit by anything, but man, it was a freaking close call. And we ended up just running all the way back into Kurdish kind of territory on foot from that thing. That was just like one random event. And the lesson learned there is, we didn't bring like a supporting fire element with us at all. And we only brought a certain amount of ammo to the place where we kind of launched from. So we basically didn't give ourselves enough support. So we kind of went into it thinking things were going to go the way we thought they would go. Which sometimes when you think that, you should let the enemy know first how you think shit's going to go. But anyway, we made it out, luckily. We didn't get wounded by that mortar, which is kind of fascinating. I think there was like a ledge between where it hit and where we were. So it made this massive blast. I'll never forget it because I saw it blast. And but I think all the shrapnel and stuff deflected off of that ridge in front of us, so we didn't get hit with anything. And we ran back. And then that was when the real deal started going into effect. Now we're going to do this thing called Operation Viking Hammer, which was the biggest deal of my military career, for whatever that's worth. Where we had, we were planning this with the Kurds. We built the biggest terrain model ever made out of dirt, where we built like. In military planning, you build terrain models oftentimes, especially if you've ever been to like ranger school. It's like a big thing that you do there, or it was anyway. We built that, and there was going to be these prongs of attack. And I forgot to mention there was a chemical production facility in the village of Sargat inside of the Ansar Islam compound. So this was actually the big strategic context that I forgot to mention, is that back then, if you remember, like we were looking for a connection between Al-Qaeda and Saddam and weapons of mass destruction, and remember all that stuff was what this was all about, supposedly.
It was the whole cell of the entire campaign.
Exactly. So Ansar Islam and the Sargat chemical facility was a big element of that whole thing, from what I understand. And like our mission was to capture that chemical facility. And my team just so happened to be the ones who were the main effort of the attack, where our job was to basically go in and secure the village of Sargat, and, so we can bring in a sensitive site exploitation team into that chemical facility. But the way we set up the attack is, I think there was like, I don't remember how many prongs there were, but there was at least 4 prongs of attack that we did. And with each prong was basically a bunch of SF guys and a bunch of Kurds. And also, again, there were Air Force guys scattered across all of us that actually did some heroics at different points. But we had, my team was the yellow prong of the attack. We colored the prong. It was like black, green, orange, red, and yellow. So I guess those are the ones I remember. Maybe there was 5. There's a map of it somewhere floating around on the internet. But my team was split between the green prong and the yellow prong. The green prong was essentially like a support fire element that went up the ridge along the northern edge of Sargat, and my team's mission was to go right up the middle into Sargat and take that down. Each element of each SF team or each group had like anywhere between 200 to 500 Kurds with them, PUK guys. And so there was, the estimated amount of Kurds on that day was like 8,000.
Wow.
So you got like 8,000 Kurds, roughly 6 ODAs split up into smaller groups, because my team was actually split up into 2 groups, actually 3, because my captain was separated even from the 2 groups on our team. And then each group had a bunch of Kurds that went with them on that prong, and that's how we did the attack. And I'll never forget, like the morning of that, by the way, none of us slept the night before. And just another thing about this, it wasn't like some chance encounter of like a firefight when you're driving around, you leave the green zone after hitting Burger King or something, and somebody took some pot shots at you, so you responded to it. Like, not to trivialize that, but this was a deliberate attack before there was any infrastructure whatsoever, like in the country. And we're just embedded, living with the Kurds, and friggin' created this whole operation. So like the morning of, none of us had slept, and I jump in the back of a pickup with the Kurds. I'm carrying a M21 sniper rifle, and we head out to basically start to kick this shit off. And like when we're driving up to this little village called Dokkan, which is where we staged to do the attack. And as we were driving up, there was a massive, I call it like a horde of Kurds just waiting. And like Kurds are showing up in like taxi cabs. and like tractors and motorcycles and like we called them clown cars, people hanging out of them to try to get there, and fight on this data. Because these terrorist groups were basically taking their terrain, that was their area, and they wanted it back basically for a couple of years actually. So anyway, to make a bit of a long story short, there's I don't know, there had to be a couple thousand Kurds right there in this giant gaggle fuck of Kurds, and we drive right in the middle of them. The Kurds are cheering for us, by the way, and we get out, and one of the main things I remember that day is there was these Kurdish like flatbed truck, kind of like a deuce and a half, but with no bed on it, with a ZSU 23-2 anti-aircraft gun bolted to the bed of it. And that thing is pretty much it was basically the signal to charge was when the dude touched that thing off towards Ansar Islam. And it was kind of creepy, man, in the beginning of this, because when we were standing there in this massive horde of Kurds, Ansar Islam guys were standing on the ridge watching us.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like looking up at the ridge, and these guys are standing there just watching us. I don't know how many there were, 50 maybe, little dots along this ridge. And we kind of knew, like, this is some serious shit. We're about to basically charge these mountains, and we're going to be fighting these freaking guys.
And they know we're coming.
Yeah. We bombed the living piss out of them with tomahawks, but you know how it is with unconventional forces, like, how much does that really hinder them? We weren't sure how much of an impact it was. The Kurds told us they don't think those tomahawks did shit. That was their assessment. They're like, people are going to walk away from those positions you registered, grab their stuff, and just wait for the scunion to end and then go right back to what they do. I don't know to what degree that was true or not, but the bottom line is, old Kurd jumps up on that friggin' deuce and a half and starts, sending 20 millimeter rounds or whatever they are downrange with that ZSU. And that's when we kind of, I'd describe it as we started oozing that giant horde towards the mountains. And they had dump trucks with Kurds in them. That was kind of like the Kurdish guerrilla form of a armored personnel carrier, as a big dump truck full of dudes, as many as you can fit in the back. And we jumped up on top of our little pickup trucks, which, by the way, we had the 50 cal, the M2 50 cal, and Mark 19 just thrown in the back of those. The Kurds taught us, don't mount your machine gun to the truck, because as soon as you touch it off, you're just going to be a bullet magnet. You're better off like grabbing it out of the back, setting it up somewhere good, and like doing a crew drill a little bit to fire it up. But anyway, we headed out towards the bad guys, man. And within a few minutes, we got to the base of like the ridge where the Green Prong guys were going to go up, and that's where basically the fire started for us. Green Prong heads up the hill. We say, good luck to our boys on our team, and then we kind of let them handle that, and we kept going around and up the valley. I'll never forget one thing too. Like there was a dude's leg still in the boot, basically rotting on the side of the road, which was probably the result of one of our tomahawk strikes. For some reason in my mind, I remember that boot sitting there and some Kurdish guy kicking it out of his way as we friggin' kind of rolled up around this. It's kind of the brutality of war, that's the kind of shit laying around, So anyway, we come around the corner, and not far along that corner, we start taking fire from a couple directions. There was a little village called Gulp, weird name, but there was fire coming from there and also to the right of that, and kind of a crossfire on us. By the way, there's hundreds of Kurds with us. I'm talking about, this is like, imagine being on a couple football fields of grassy terrain and having a person standing every couple feet.
Like a Braveheart charge?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Actually, it's funny. In my book, when I wrote about this, I actually I use that as an analogy of what this was like.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's like when instead of Mel Gibson screaming charge or whatever, it was the ZSU that kicked us off and we headed out into the mountains. But that's a bit of an exaggeration, but that's kind of what it was. But anyway, man, start taking fire. I jumped down in the prone and started trying to spot targets and return some fire. I returned some fire, but man, the Kurds were so on the friggin' ball. Those guys, I think of them, they're like locusts in how they just swarm enemy. But there was, we were having trouble with the machine gun fire that was up kind of above Gulp and firing down on us. And we're all in the wide open, man. Like, it was freaking terrifying because there's nowhere to hide. It was like being in the prairies at the foothill of the Rocky Mountains. You know what I mean? And we're just getting hammered by machine gun fire. And somebody, I think it was my team sergeant, but I don't remember, called in an airstrike. And I think it was an F-18 that came in super low over us and fired. It's like, I think those things have 30 millimeters on them. And it just lit the friggin' place up beyond the hillside, basically in the direction we were going. And all fire stopped, basically, at that point. And the Kurds went friggin' nuts, man. Like, they were hugging us and, like, they were ecstatic. It was like a motivational speaker came through, man. But it was like this, that thing was so low and awesome. And I'd never been, you know how in training you do stuff with fast movers and stuff, but I'd never had one like that in combat, man. And that thing was just unbelievable in its just viciousness.
Yeah.
And like having that thing come through and just make one strafing run was a total game changer at that moment. A game changer tactically because he suppressed that fire, but also the motivation of the Kurds because they knew that. They got us with the radios talking to those guys. In their mind, like, we're invincible. Like, let's roll. So anyway, we keep going. This battle went from sun up to sundown, by the way. It was all day with only one lull in fire where they gave us lunch, basically on a silver platter, which is a funny story. But so anyway, we go up through Gulp. There's dead bodies everywhere in Gulp. And that's where there were elements, if I remember right, there were elements of the Red Prong with us up to that point. And Red Prong was like a different ODA from Charlie Company. And they split off on a different, basically, pathway to a different town called Biara, which was also a really hot spot for Ansar Islam right on the border of Iran. But we kept going. That was another moment where I was looking at the dead bodies, and it was cold that morning. And there was like steam coming out of bullet holes from dudes laying on the ground and like blood, running out of people. And I'll never forget that. And then weirdly too, some dude, an Ansar guy, had been somehow hiding out, and he popped up and fired on not my team. We were too far away, but fired on these guys from Charlie Company, and this one dude just freaking hammered this guy. It became like a famous, very well done job of which this guy kind of hid out behind a stone wall and waited till we were in there, and he jumped up and fired on those guys, and this one dude just freaking hammered him with like 10 rounds of the chest in like instantaneous fashion. But I didn't see that, but it was lore afterwards. So we kept going up kind of a road that just, how like a typical river valley has sometimes like a road going along the valley. That was kind of how it was going up the Sargat Valley into where the kind of, you could call it the headquarters of Ansar Islam was up in Sargat. And we took fire multiple times along that path, but the next time after Gulp, we taking fire from probably folks that the enemy, that the Red Prong had kind of flushed our way. And that was some pretty serious fire pinning us down. We pulled the Mark 19 out of the truck, set it up, and started just hammering the hillside. And some of these firefights were like 300, 400, 500 meters in distance because there's no cover. It's all wide open, basically mountainscape. That's kind of how it was there. So 100, 200 yards is actually really close in that kind of terrain. So we're firing this Mark 19 at people who are like 600 or 800 yards away, but they were firing at us. So we did that, and we packed back up, and then we started actually kind of falling behind the front, what we called the front line trace of the Kurdish advance. And one of our main jobs as the SF guys embedded in the Kurds was to stay on the front line so we can orchestrate across the prongs. Because there's the green prong, the yellow prong, the red prong, and then orange and black. I don't remember how they played into it, but we had to stay in coordination. So we had established like phase lines and shit like that, like a big deliberate attack. And so anyway, we ended up jumping in the truck, put the Mark 19 back in, and like speed racering up to where we were close to the front line of where the Kurds were moving up the valley. And we ended up stopping right where they were fighting, basically on the front line up into the final advances of Sargat. And like a couple hours have gone by at this point. We got out of the vehicles and kind of just went off the road. The Kurds were freaking out at us because they were under orders from their leader, like Jalal Talabani. You know, Talabani later became like the president of Iraq, I guess. And we had his son with us, by the way, Bafel Talabani.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so their orders were to make sure the Americans don't get hurt, was kind of their thing. So they were very concerned about us all the time. So we jumped out of the truck and we split up into our two elements, which was my team sergeant and two dudes, and then me and two dudes. So at that point, it was basically me and these two guys. That one was one of our medics and the other was our comms guy. The medic ended up actually going to Delta not too long after we got back, actually. He was an awesome guy. And they were all awesome, man. But we ended up jumping out and going our ways. So we started going out into kind of right in the belly of the valley, going up the front, basically the front line of this advancement. And we got heavy fire when we started doing that. We drained a M240 of all the ammo we had, not too far after we like got out of the vehicle and like moved out. The comms guy I was talking about grabbed the 240. I was firing with the M21. I was glad I brought the M21 at that point and not an M4 because the ranges we were firing at, you know, we're pushing the boundary of a 5.56, you know, and I was glad I had that 7.62 with me. So anyway, we were firing at people. There was so much fire in both directions and so many Kurds. It was hard to know if you actually hit someone or somebody else did in the fury and confusion of the moment. So we ended up we got pinned down at multiple phases for like quite a long time each time. And we were kind of waiting for the green prong to keep advancing because they were kind of like, think of them as up on a ridge as our support fire element as we moved up the valley. One of the guys on my team registered like a 1,600 meter kill with a Beret 50 cal on that mission. Yeah. He was up on the green prong, like up on the high ground. You could hear that thing going off periodically, and amongst the noise, you'd hear that thing bark periodically. This was super intense, man, and we kept going basically, and it was kind of this weird agricultural area leading up into the Sargat, village, which is a tiny village. And we used these rows of stone walls, and there was like a cemetery there as well as cover. That was pretty much the only cover, was bounding through these stone walls and firing and maneuvering. hours went by of shoot, move, and communicate. I tried to call in mortars from our mortar crew that we had set up. I couldn't get comms with anybody. And finally, we got kind of to the furthest point on the outskirts of Sargat. And man, it was like when, you know how you were a SEAL and you're like, when you think of war and like I guess your expectation of it, I think that day met my expectation, let's put it that way. I wouldn't say that it was like, I mean, there were certainly other things more intense that people have done, and I'm not claiming to be like that it was the most epic battle of all time, but it was no freaking joke. And like, let's just say ever since I've been fully satisfied in my experience in combat because of that day. But so we got up to this final stone wall and we're pinned down. There's tons of fire in both directions. And at some point we basically just couldn't move. Like I didn't know what to do. I was basically the lead of my crew of 2 guys, and probably there was another, I don't know, 150, 200 Kurds with us. It was kind of the element we were moving with. And, you know, this was kind of an epic moment to me where we were stuck, man. Like I was crawling along the stone wall, pop up, try to shoot. Fire would rain down, I'd jump down, crawl around, and popping up and shooting for hours. I think we did that. And eventually, one of the guys on my team, I think it was the dude who'd end up going Delta, screamed to me and the other guy, like, what the fuck are we going to do? Like, there was heavy machine gun fire, like those 14.5 millimeter machine guns. You ever see those things? They're like a 1 barrel deal, but they had one of those things raining down on the valley. Tons of fire from the village and surrounding hills. But by the way, Sargat's like a bowl of you know, it's like it's nestled in a bowl of a ridge around it. And so they had basically high ground around it, and we were coming into the outskirts of the low ground of the village. I'll tell you, man, like I was scared shitless. Like, and I'm not afraid to admit it because it's the truth, is that I didn't know what to fucking do. And I was basically locked. I was frozen, man, for a while. And like, basically the only thing we could do was hope the Kurdish flanking elements broke the shit up somehow. But we were hoping for too long, I think, and it was bad, man. But this is one of those moments that I think is amazing. Is out of nowhere, in a hail of friggin' bullets that was going on, my captain comes running through the friggin' bullets over to my, like, where I'm like hunkered down behind this stone wall. And he runs over and jumps down next to me with a big smile on his face and says, like, how you doing? And I probably looked at him with, you know, deer in the headlights. And he said, there's cover over the other way, and we got to get over there so we can maneuver to the right. Because he was, my captain, this is how awesome SF is sometimes, man, is a captain can quickly turn into like a general of a massive event. So like my captain was basically the sidekick of the Kurdish general level guy for the whole battle. And the CIA dudes were also with him, and he was like the command and control of basically the whole friggin' thing. So anyway, he came down, and then he left his map sitting next to me. I'll never forget this. And he runs away again through the hail of bullets. And I'm like, holy shit, man, he's gonna get himself killed. And he's like, and then he runs back to get his map. And I was like, sir, you're gonna get fucking killed. And he's like, we gotta move. And that's it, man. And he took off again. And that, I don't know, man, I think that unlocked me of like, we can move and we need to. So we kind of, you know, me and my 2 compadres there kind of briefly exchanged words, and we said, we're going to go to, because this is how confusing it was, man. We didn't even know where to go. Like if you went to the left, where would you end up? You don't know. There's 150 Kurds all pinned down over there. if you go forward, you're basically going into a hail of bullets in open terrain. And to the right, we couldn't see because of just the terrain. So basically, we ran like in the blind towards where my captain ran to. And just knowing that we're going to have to just figure it out on the fly where we duck down and freaking get some cover. So anyway, man, we did it. It was intense. I almost got shot by a Kurd, actually, because he didn't see us coming sideways. We actually should have been more careful, because we had like multiple lines of Kurds firing, and we were kind of towards the front, or at the front. And when I ran across this way, not I, like we, it was actually dangerous, a friendly fire incident. So we were screaming as we ran, and like we got over to this place where my captain was, and then he basically dispatched us to put the 50 cal into operation up on top of this big hilltop to the right of us, which was on kind of the southeast. Well, actually, it might have been the southern kind of end of the bowl that I described around the valley, because we needed to get some kind of fire superiority, or at least the illusion of it, quickly. And I think that was his. That was his plan, I think. So anyway, we did. Me and my two dudes, again, like ran out in through kind of the fire, all the way over to where that road was that I was kind of telling you about, where it's like a dirt road, where our truck was parked behind kind of some cover around some ridgeline somewhere. And we made it to the truck. It was insane, because like tracers were hitting the ground, and like, how they can spin up, and like that was happening as we were running. Tracers going both ways, and just we ran through there. I don't know how nobody got hit on this day really with anything, but we got to the truck, jumped in the truck, and drove it up around the corner to kind of the back end of this hill that our captain wanted us to get up on top of, and grabbed the 50 cal out of the back of the truck. It was kind of one of those SF dude moments where the comms guy on my team, we called him Blake. He was a freaking beast of a dude, like a lot of guys are, like 6'2", 230-pound machine, grabs a 50 cal and just puts it on his shoulder, and we're running up the hill. The other guy grabs a tripod, and then we're all grabbing ammo cans, and a couple Kurds show up to grab more ammo cans, and we just friggin' sprint up this hill. That's why you do PT, and you gotta be able to sling it. So anyway, we got to the top of the hill, set up the 50 cal, taking fire up there, but really not insanely bad once we got up there, because there was kind of like a divot in the ground. And we set up that 50. I was like the assistant gunner to the comms guy on the 50 cal, and we identified a couple positions down on the other side of that bowl, and we just started friggin' hammering positions with that 50 cal. And either it was one other interesting horrible thing actually was right below us was actually that Sargot chemical facility. Like I can picture it right now in my head, like it was yesterday. Looking out over that hill, down below us was the semi-destroyed, because it got tomahawked like twice, chemical facility, which I don't understand why they tomahawked it actually. Because you think you'd want to maintain what was in it for evidentiary reasons, but they did.
Even just from an environmental standpoint, because to me, we learned this lesson, not to interrupt or sidetrack, but blowing up surface-to-air missile sites in training set a standard charge where the head meets the body.
Yep.
Or shoot it there with like an AT-4 or a Gustav round or whatever, and that initiates the ambush on the surface-to-air site. The very first time we blew one of those up and saw how much of a plume of toxic orange smoke goes into the surrounding area just from one rocket, taught us immediately is that's the last fucking thing you do. So to me, to tomahawk that and then move through it, like God knows what you guys were exposed to.
Yeah, and I honestly think we were exposed.
I have no doubt. Yeah.
But it's good. It's a good thing the Tomahawk barrage was on the shock and awe day,
Yeah.
and this was a couple days later at least.
Some,
But yeah. Anyway, what as we're up there firing and we're starting to stop firing, I think we borderline freaking overheated the 50 cal on that hill.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many. We put hundreds of rounds through that thing, but. And I think a lot of it up there, whether or not we actually did a ton of damage because we definitely annihilated a couple like machine gun bunkers or something, but I think it was a psychological thing too, to hear that big thing freaking barking up there, like a motivational speaker, you could say, was unlocked some movement.
and probably suppressed.
Yeah, you
some
know how
of
it is. Like if you start taking fire from another angle,
Yeah.
it opens up opportunity for people on another one of your angles. And I think as we were up there and we're blasting with that 50, a Kurdish element came in from the right, and they started breaking ground coming up straight up the valley like where I came from. But I saw a Kurdish guy just get mowed down by like a heavy machine gun right down below us in a way that was kind of shocking. It's almost like it dismantles your body, you know, if you'd never seen that, like I never saw that necessarily before directly and so openly.
And you won't see that with small arms fire.
Yeah, exactly. When a 50 cal hits somebody 4 or 5 times from it was probably 100 feet from maybe 100 yards actually, from the outskirts of the village as these guys were coming in. I'll just never forget how that guy just so unnaturally got dismantled into a friggin', not like flying parts, but just unnaturally warped into a pile of dead, you know, right there.
This was one of your guys? This was one of your guys or one of the...
One of our Kurds, you know. And not long after that, we ended up just going down. Essentially, that was kind of the main point of when it escalated, and then that was the climax, you could say. The 50 cal, and then us breaking through kind of that front line into the village, Kurds sweeping through the village. That was pretty much the main. It picked up later in another hour when we went further deeper towards Iran. But for that time being, that was kind of the mission success right there. We took Sargat, and we basically had secured it. So we grabbed the 50 cal, walked down the hill, and interestingly, the Kurds kind of shuttled us into this area where we're kind of under an embankment on the side of the road, kind of like how roads are like carved out in a mountain landscape. But we were hunkered down by the road with the chemical facility literally right there in front of us. We were 20 feet from it. Matter of fact, I think we walked through it just to get to where we are with like the 50 cal. And they brought us lunch. And I was saying before, this is how the Kurds are with us. And they brought us, it was almost like charcuterie on like a giant platter. And it was like, basically it's time for the Americans to have lunch. And
Wow.
Still some bullets flying. You know, you could say the Kurds were doing some cleanup around the edges. But there we were. We took a lunch break basically, and
wild.
Yeah, it's freaking crazy, man. A memorable thing at that point was when truckloads of wounded and dead Kurds were driving past our position, that had been wounded in this battle. And I remember one of them having blood coming out like the back of the truck, out of the back of the pickup.
Wow.
Memorable kind of shit like that. And so after that, though, we ate our lunch, and we picked back up and headed up the hill. So there was a secondary kind of objective to clear this. I'm trying to remember. The village was Daramar, I think. If anybody's geeky enough to look at the map, it's a little bit closer to the border of Iran. And we went up this hill and got to this village that's kind of on a hilltop up there. And you could see the Iranian border. All the mountains are snow-capped peaks of, looking again like the Rockies, and we ended up getting a serious firefight again up there with apparently Ansar guys who were probably squirted out towards Iran, which happened a lot, by the way. Tons of them got away, which we can talk about this part of it too, like what was the actual efficacy of this. But anyway, we were pinned down really bad. They were friggin' whittling away at these buildings we were in. I remember that one because Baful Talabani was there with us. Because we reunited with our other teammates at that point. I forgot to mention that. Because remember, we were basically broken into 3 groups. And then we came together and went all the way up into that thing. And then now we're pinned down by like pretty serious fire. Again, we put the 50 cal up on the edge of this building and tried to return some fire. It was super hard to find any targets. It's one of the most... By the way, frustrating. Combat is very frustrating. I don't know what your experience was, but like, you tend to have this expectation that you're gonna be able to pinpoint targets and use your awesome Green Beret skills to friggin' shoot and kill the enemy. But the reality is, you can hardly ever even find out where they are.
Yeah, I mean, they want to stay alive as much as you do.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, there were hardly any moments where I could really like put a bead on somebody and know whether or not my shots actually took them down, or did they just move?
Yeah.
And like the frustration level of just being pinned down by fire where you don't know where it's coming from was, I don't know, for me that was super frustrating and stressful. But anyway, what we ended up doing on the outskirts of this town, was my captain called in an airstrike. He called for air support through our Air Force dude, and a pilot came through and dropped like 4 big bombs at like danger close. I don't know how far it was away, 300 or 400 meters maybe. I'll never forget the boom of those. And just when the plane basically said like, bombs away basically, and we said you're cleared hot and all that shit. The green prong guys, if you remember, they were like our left flank, came up over the ridge where the dude's about to drop the friggin' bombs.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh my God. Like, I'll never forget the look on my captain's face, man. It was like he was made of stone. Luckily, nothing happened to him. And actually, the bombs took pretty good care of the problem we had with those machine gun fire that we couldn't pinpoint, just hammering us on this site. So the bombs dropped. One amazing thing about those bombs too is in northern Iraq, the terrain is a lot of like shale, like stone just falling down it. I think it's shale, but the bombs blew that stuff outward. So it sounded like artillery rounds flying through the air. So we were like, what the fuck is that?
Almost like shrapnel.
Yeah, and the Kurds were like, it's stones, basically. And this one dude who was actually manning a 106 millimeter recoilless rifle. But anyway, those bombs dropped. We still had a few rounds fired at us as we kind of exfilled out of there. And that was basically the end of the whole day's worth of fighting at that point. At that point, we went down the hill and basically hooched up for the night in some Ansar Islam house down in there, which, by the way, was full of like radical Islamic propaganda books and shit that they've been running like this camp on. And that was the highlights of Operation Viking Hammer, and that right there was like 12 or 14 hours of stuff. It was pretty hardcore, man.
Dude, it sounds like it. I mean, it's like a movie in and of itself. Just that one.
Yeah, it was
one operation.
I mean, it's hard to just I actually hate coming off as exaggerating shit. I'm actually afraid of it. You know what I mean? I don't want to sound like one of these posers.
Yeah.
Because there were moments where it wasn't total insanity during that time, but there were these spikes in the contact we made it was serious freaking business, man. And like, to me, it was a significant emotional event that I will never
For sure. I mean,
I will never forget it. Let's put it that way.
yeah, no, I can imagine. I mean, it's sitting on the edge of my seat just listening to it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's one of the strangest things about modern warfare, I guess, is those peaks and valleys. It's primarily valleys, but it can go from, you're daydreaming and fucking dozing off to fighting for your life, and then right back to just total silence, like nothing happened.
Yep.
And that kind of roller coaster of adrenaline and emotion is fucking exhausting.
It is.
In a weird way.
Yeah, I have to say, I don't think I've ever been as tired in my life
Yeah.
as I was after that day. Because
Yeah.
we probably covered, I don't know, 20 kilometers on foot
Yeah.
during that whole day. So just that alone. And we were wearing the front body armor plate and then our full kit, with no helmet though, because helmets would have made us just stand out among the Kurds.
Yeah. But I think when you combine that high level of physical exertion for 12 to 14 hours, combined with the emotional adrenaline spikes over and over and over, I mean, it's kind of like the dopamine rush that
crazy.
People get so depleted, that you just crash afterwards, and those two things combined is fucking brutal.
It was rough, man, and like. I usually in hindsight I refer to soft guys as like Olympians with guns.
Yeah.
Because the physical ability of most soft guys is freaking pretty nuts, actually.
Yeah.
Even the guys who aren't in the top of the heap of the soft pack. And I'll tell you what, even with that, we were freaking smoked.
I'll bet.
And like everybody was
Yeah.
hurt. And also it's tough to keep up with the indige, man.
Sure.
Like the Kurds are traveling light, and they are friggin' like mountain goats, man. And like they're not carrying as much stuff, and we had to keep up with them.
Right.
And like you get worn out. But we were devastatingly tired, and also some of us got like sick basically. And this is where I'm pretty convinced that there's something up with that Sargat chemical facility.
I have no doubt. Yeah.
That made us feel like shit for like a couple weeks.
Do you know what the elevation was in that area?
It was fairly high. I think the mountains around there can be like 12 or 13,000 feet.
I mean, that for sure plays a role too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even coming from Fort Carson, I imagine it was notably higher than what you were used to.
Yeah. I think it was actually about the same.
Oh, really?
Fort Carson's like 6,500 feet.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not sure where, I don't know, I don't remember actually, but it was definitely a factor.
Yeah.
Because we weren't at that, because you could say we came down from the Colorado elevation while we were doing the AFO shit for like 3 months, and then we went back up into Viking Hammer in the mountains. So we probably deacclimated anyway from Colorado.
Do you have any idea what the losses were on each side?
I have some clue. The Kurds were not forthcoming for some reason in how many they lost. I don't think it was that many, actually, even though any is enough. But the estimates for Ansar Islam was like 300. And there were supposedly 600 or 700 of them in this compound.
Yeah.
But that was so the operations weren't completely over that day. That was just the main jab, the main assault into there. For the next day, we cleared out some caves, and then we were also mortaring and rocketing people as they tried to escape into Iran, that went on for a couple days.
Yeah.
People, these friggin' Ansar guys were post-holing through the snow, into Iran. But one of the most significant things to me was I think it was the second day, where the sensitive site exploitation team actually came in to go through the Sargat facility. And they were wearing like those spacesuit kind of things. So, us like bunch of SF guys are like, should we have been wearing those like yesterday? And
wait, why do you guys have those?
Yeah, like what's going on again? We were just kind of eating lunch next to
Rubbing our
that
nuts
yesterday.
all over it. Yeah.
But anyway, they came through and did their thing, but they also needed to collect hair samples from the dead, because apparently hair samples have a really strong indicator of anything someone's been working with is embedded like in your hair. So I got the unfortunate task, me and my medic, to collect hair samples off of the dead. And it was a friggin' gruesome, shocking, all day basically, close to all day, walking around with a pair of scissors, a plastic bag, and a digital camera, and cutting hair off dead people for a freaking whole day basically. And man, it was, you would think that since these guys were trying to kill us the day before, that you wouldn't really give a shit. But man, the gore really bothered me, man. And it has like ever since. It's just shocking levels of gore. I don't know how to describe it. Like dudes, oh, by the way, the Ansar guys strapped themselves with explosives, some of them. So when we overran them, they blew themselves up. So I was cutting hair off people that had blown themselves up. So you got like a dude who's burned like in half, basically, and like their whole jaw is showing kind of like a snarl. And it's one thing to see that, but to reach down and like grab their hair and cut it off, it was gruesome and it kind of jacked me up. Let's put it that way. It took me. I was surprised how much it bothered me. Let's put it that way. And dudes blown in half, like split in half from the crotch. Heads laying on the ground with no body, arms, legs, like just total. It was like a zombie movie type thing, man. And like there were bodies laying everywhere, it seemed like, along this, like, back to the bowl concept, along this whole side of this bowl, there was just dead, obliterated Ansar guys all over the place. Blood running down the hill. Like shit you'll never forget, man.
Yeah.
And like, part of me was like, fuck these guys. But the other part was like, holy shit, this is friggin' insane, you know? Like there was a group of like 4 or 5 of them that had apparently been hit with like an incendiary round from a 106 recoilless rifle. And they were just kind of burned into a pile of like just twisted up, you know, friggin' death. I'll never forget that one. And we're cutting hair, whatever hair's left, we're cutting it off and getting it in bags and taking pictures of this shit. We had to swap spots at some point, you know, so one of us is taking pictures and the other one's cutting hair. It was friggin' brutal, man.
And is it like one sample of hair in one bag?
Yeah.
Picture goes with it, numbered, whatever.
That's right.
Like,
It was bag with hair in it. Take a picture of the dude, and then write the image name on the bag. And you know how the bags are like a little white spot for writing shit? Yeah. That's how we did it. We ran out of bags after I don't know how long, but.
And so are you carrying like a backpack to put all of them in?
Yep, got a backpack, digital camera, and our weapons are just slung at that point because the place was largely secure.
I imagine the smell was distinct.
Horrible. Yep, because dudes that blow themselves up have shit in them when they blow up. And so there's like the smell of shit sometimes, burnt flesh and hair, you know. It was just every kind of bad smell you can friggin' imagine, man.
When going through all of that carnage, did you guys encounter any women and children, or was it all fighting age males?
All fighting age males, and from all over the place.
Really?
Yep.
Were there any nationalities or regional fighters that surprised you?
Yep, Palestinian, PLO guys or something we found. Like, because we found documentation in there. But they were from all over the place. All the stuff you would expect, like Syria, Iraq, obviously. There was...
any Chechnyan?
Not that I remember.
Yeah. North Africa?
There were North Africans, Algeria maybe, or something. There was a ton of foreign fighter kind of stuff in there. But the one that I was surprised by was this PLF or whatever they're called. Something. It was like 2 of those guys were in there.
Yeah, PLO, I think.
PLO, yeah.
What about animals? Were there like dogs and horses and goats and shit around too, or was it pretty much just?
I don't remember anything but basically fighting age male dead guys,
Yeah.
you know.
And so you did that for that entire day.
Yep.
Ran out of bags, and then was that it, or did you guys do follow on?
We did a few things where there was some caves up in this ridge, up in this gully, where I went up there with a couple guys, and the Kurds really did the most of it, but we did some like overwatch, but we never got into any more like combat in that area, in that place.
Did any of their armament surprise you in terms of some of the weapons? Like, were any of them American weapons or things that you weren't expecting?
Not that I saw. They were basic shit. Yeah. The only thing we did find that was interesting was some like French-made missiles, like in the packaging.
Oh wow!
On the top of some hill somewhere.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they ever used them or whatever, but they were there.
Yeah. And no U.S. casualties?
None.
Not a single one. That's fascinating.
It is.
I mean, of all that amount of time, you know, and an operation of that scale with that many guys, that dicey of hour after hour gunfighting, not a single U.S. casualty. I mean, that's a testament.
Yeah. I think it's also a reason for that could be that there was so many Kurds with us.
That were very protective of you.
And they were protective, and also just like, if you're kind of like what I was describing, the confusion of trying to fire at somebody, Ansar Islam guys probably had the same experience. I'm like, there's literally hundreds of Kurds everywhere and a few Americans sprinkled. What are the chances of the fire being specifically directed at you as an individual? That fluctuated through the course of that time, you know what I mean? So like, I guess I don't know, just thinking out loud, that's a factor too.
Yeah.
You know?
This may seem like a totally off the wall question, but it makes me think as much as you are into philosophy, were you prior to that, or is that a big part of why you are now?
I think it's a big part of why I am now, and also a very specific. I actually started caring about philosophy in Iraq, and it's because one of the dudes on my team actually had a degree in philosophy from like St. John's College, and he was always talking about it.
Yeah.
And there was something about the timing that's when the stuff that he was talking about became interesting to me.
In the subsequent years post-service and diving deep into philosophy, is that days something that you either reconcile, rationalize, or think about a lot as it relates to some of the philosophy that you're reading about?
Yeah, I would say so. You know, I think about the philosophy of war just all the time, and I think about like, how does it come to this? You know, of like these, let's just call radical Islamic wackos running this camp. 9/11 happening, you know, our response, like all these massive moments lead up to this trooper on the ground against these guys. And it just kind of amazes me how that stuff comes to fruition.
Yeah.
You know, and then wondering about like, you know, for that case, when we talk about the Iraqis, it's a little different for me. But for that case, I feel like we were totally in the right, like going in there. So I don't really debate that kind of shit on at least the radical Islam side. To me is pure evil, and like I think it's a pretty just war to go after that for the most part. Maybe the surrounding stuff sometimes is messed up, but I felt like that was a pretty clean op.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. But some of the subsequent Iraqi stuff was a little bit more, let's just call morally challenging once we started really doing our thing with them. But
did you do subsequent deployments to Iraq after that?
nope, never did.
Yeah.
I had a major, I don't know, we'll probably get to this, but a totally 180 shift basically in my life that started by accident. But
I guess before we get into that, the last thing I want to touch on Iraq-wise which you already alluded to, and I've spoken with a number of Iraqi war veterans, myself being one, looking back on it now, and I'll preface it with, of course, hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
It's easy to sit here and judge decisions made the same way it's easy to sit here with the winning lottery ticket numbers and wish that I had picked that, or
Right.
thought if I had just picked that, I'd be a fucking millionaire right now. But what do you think of Iraq as a 30,000 foot collective experience? Huge mistake, a mistake or not, or didn't go quite as how we wanted, but ultimately I think we made the right choice. Where do you fall on that?
I think the large campaign to like overthrow Saddam was just stupid. That one, that's how I feel about that one. I don't think we should have done that. But I think like our Operation Viking Hammer and going after those terrorist groups in there could have been done as a totally separate endeavor and almost covertly or low visibility. And I think that one could have been worth it for the global war on terror. You know what I mean? Because there was like some continuity between like Afghanistan related stuff and this place up there, like passaging through Iran. There was some shit like that, that maybe there was some efficacy to what we did. But the larger, like taking down Saddam and basically decimating the Iraqi military, I think it was probably a bad move. And sometimes if you don't, you know, if you get in a slump and think negatively about it, you could say that these kind of horrible experiences, not only were they horrible, but they were a waste. And that can make it worse for a lot of guys.
Yeah.
You know, like I have a tendency to be kind of tough about it, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I think going after Iraq in general and like the concept of the regime change was probably pretty stupid.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I am curious. I think it's safe or easy to ascertain, or accurate to ascertain. There's really only a handful of people on the planet that know the true story of what the intelligence said.
Yeah.
And it's the same handful of people that made the decision to go there. So seeing as how neither of us are in that handful of people, it's obviously pure speculation, but I'm curious what your take is on whether or not it was legitimately justified and it was doing the best we could with what we had intelligence-wise, or do you think that there is a more nefarious component to that group of people deciding to go into Iraq?
Yeah. You know, there's always the give people the benefit of the doubt side of things, and then the conspiracy theory-ish side. Like and when I think about it from giving people the benefit of the doubt, you got to think of it like this. If you have intelligence, it goes back to philosophy, by the way, too, of how do you know something before you're going to, you know, and how well do you need to know it before you take action if there's a possible threat? So if you give the decision makers a benefit of the doubt and assume they aren't corrupt and they started the whole thing for their own personal gain or whatever, which I think most politicians are capable of that, in my opinion, all of them. But you have intelligence that there is weapons of mass destruction somewhere. And the way intelligence works is there's like degrees of veracity. You have human intelligence inputs, you've got signals intelligence. Intelligence is a multi-int fusion. Like I do intelligence a lot, actually. It's not like you get one report and it's black and white and it's happening or it isn't. And if it is, then you do something and it's fully justified. Like nothing's like that. So it often boils down to like you have all these pieces of inputs. Each has their level of veracity. And then it actually takes a decision to decide what it means and whether or not you should take an action. And you'll have different leaders will do different things. George Bush's decision was obvious, but some people might have waited for more evidence. Let's put it that way. But if the threat was perceived to be... So in other words, some leaders will say, prove to me unequivocally that this threat exists before I do something. And then you have other folks who are like, but if I know the intel is never fully complete, what if I wait, then I'm going to get hit, I'm going to get surprised. So I honestly think it's a decision calculus. So I kind of in that mode of thinking where I'm not trying to incriminate our leadership, I believe they probably had a bunch of intel with different veracity from different sources. A lot of it no one will ever know about, and I think they made the call that the threat was high enough that they needed to do something about it. And that's why we went in there. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. I think it's also, it would be unfair not to point out the mentality of both the country and the government / Department of Defense at that time, as you have as caught with our pants down as we were with 9/11.
Exactly. Yep.
There's I would say not even almost, I would say that there is a panic-stricken like state of mind that's embedded into the administration at that point of saying, I'd rather preemptively do this than have that shit happen again.
Yep,
and so let's err on the side of offensive aggression.
Exactly.
And I do think it's unfair not to mention that, because where we are as a nation state now versus then is vastly different.
Yeah, I agree. So if you look at it from that historic precedence, that aspect of it wasn't a bad call, maybe.
Yeah.
Now, and the other part is, how long should we have stayed and to accomplish what? Yeah. Which is similarly, I think Afghanistan, you could argue that too.
For sure.
Why did it turn into our regime change instead of us trying to find the source of this threat and removing it and then leaving? You know what I mean? Why did that happen? I think that was...
Yeah, I think
it's a dynamic that is interesting.
Yeah, and I think, again, to be fair on the other side of the coin is you have, a president whose father, you could argue, had some unfinished business, and there's been a number of kind of historically highlighted mistakes of not seeing it further through the first time.
Yep.
Did that play a role? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't.
Yeah.
Again, I think there's probably 2, maybe 3 people on the planet that know the answer to that. But
that's right.
I think you have to at least consider the fact that was part of the equation. To what degree, who knows? But
yeah, I think I would caution people to not be too black and white about their decision about what they think about it, because I don't think anybody knows what they don't know.
Yeah.
About what drove that decision. To your point, too, 2 or 3 people probably know the true factors that went into that decision.
Yeah, I mean, there's really only one person that knows what was inside his head, who's ultimately in the position to make that decision by himself.
Yep, exactly.
So, you mentioned a 180-degree shift.
Yeah.
Lifestyle-wise, what happened?
Yeah, so after Viking Hammer, we actually shifted focus to the Iraqi Green Line and did a bunch of crazy shit there. But ultimately, I'll skip that part. Unless you want me to go through that one, there was some hairy shit in there. But,
which part?
When we shifted focus from Ansar Islam to the Iraqi military, and we started.
I mean, I would say whatever you think is worth.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to.
Maybe Reader's Digest it.
Yeah, I'll try to Reader's Digest it. So, and it's kind of an epic SF tale. Is basically we're done with Viking Hammer. Great job. Okay, now you're going to get redirected to do something completely different, which is now we're going after the Iraqi military. By the way, one of the main strategies of going after Ansar Islam and the 3 groups there was to kind of secure our back door as we pushed south with the Kurds to take out the Iraqi military in the north. Fun fact, by the way, 2/3 of the Iraqi military was in the north. And 2 SF battalions, basically, with augmentations from 3rd Group and AFSOC guys embedded, basically and then we probably had a total of, I don't know, 60 to 100,000 Kurds, basically handled 2/3 of the Iraqi army in the north, which is a pretty awesome story in terms of getting your money's worth out of a force multiplying force. I don't know, it's just a pretty, if you're wondering like what makes Green Berets different, in my opinion, it's shit like that. Like, and back to your other point too, I don't think we ever really needed to send conventional troops into Iraq at all. Like, we could have done it the SF way, I think, across the board.
And you could probably argue the same thing in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You know,
like look what we did to the Northern Alliance in like weeks.
yeah.
And then once everything else came in, it just slows to a crawl. Unconventional warfare, you have to fight. You have to be fast as your enemy can move and adapt. You have to be that fast. And as soon as you bring in conventional troops, it's just like,
Grinds to a
it's
halt.
just like anathema, man. Like they're just not designed to react to unconventional warfare like SF and others are. But anyway, so we left Viking Hammer. We were friggin' dog tired, man, and we headed back out to Suleimania, where we got issued some brand new kick-ass Land Rovers. And then our mission was go south to this. This is how mission statements go to in the Green Berets. It's probably similar in the SEALs, I don't know. But go south somewhere near this place called Tuz, find some Kurds and start killing the Iraqis. That's basically our mission statement from our company commander. And like, think about that. That's all we needed to be told to go do our job. And we did. So we headed south and we ended up linking up with Kurds kind of randomly down there. And we started basically doing bombing campaigns against the Iraqi military, who had been kind of pushed down from the Green Line already. And we just started obliterating them with airstrikes. And a couple highlights of that was that the airstrikes were so devastating and we were so invincible compared, I mean, they were so helpless against basically our technology that it was almost disgusting to me, man. Like, I started to get basically sickened by it. I couldn't even like watch the shit after a while. But, you know, it was brutal just watching us eviscerate freaking whole Iraqi units. It was bloody, man. And
I mean, like video game style.
yeah, I mean, it just a day in the life at that point was jump in the truck with some Kurds, drive out through the wadis, jump out of the truck, sneak up to like a vantage point, kind of like almost old school reconnaissance type stuff. Air Force guy, get the AWACS on the call and wait for some air support, pinpoint some targets. Sometimes we'd be, 500, 800 meters away. Sometimes we'd be 2 clicks away, and just wait for the friggin' bombs to show up. Wait for aircraft to be able to do the hits, and then watch the bombs drop and watch Iraqi soldiers just get friggin' annihilated like ants. Fireball, man, like just unbelievable. Like a 2,000-pound bomb coming off of an aircraft and hitting like 100 people is a friggin' event you will never forget. When you're looking through like a 40-power spotting scope, you know what I mean? You can see some detail.
Yeah.
And it's ugly, man. And it kind of bothered me after a while. It was not sexy, let's put it that way, just to see that happening. Eventually, we kind of, I guess, broke the Iraqi military out of Tuz. Most of the Iraqi military just dispersed, and they ran away, basically. And I actually think it was a dumb move on our part to decimate them completely. We should have actually kept them and turned them into the future security force of Iraq instead of letting Iraq plunge into total friggin' chaos, assuming everyone would just throw a party when Saddam died, which is a friggin' really dumb way to think. But
Yeah, I think that pretty collectively, I think that's, if I had to guess or say or pinpoint, the biggest mistake we made is that.
yeah.
That's pretty largely agreed upon, I think. But
You know, and even like while we were doing that, I remember one night in our like little ops room of this burned out oil pumping facility that we were hooched up in for the night with a couple Kurds down the road. My captain and I were actually talked about this. We were like, why aren't we basically trying to get them to surrender right now and turn them into the security force? And I think my captain even suggested this up to like our higher command. And so there's no doubt in my mind that our SF leadership knew that that was the deal, but I think it was the larger leadership was just so clueless about that. Like what's going to happen when Saddam doesn't exist anymore? It's not going to be, a big celebration of a multi-ethnic democracy, like, which I'll talk about that in 1 second. I'll try to speed this part up, man. I know it's long, but so when we went down into twos, a big highlight was driving through a friggin' minefield in the middle of the night as the Kurds were taking down twos. So, and it was a pretty huge operation. We had like 20,000 Kurds take Kirkuk with like a company of SF dudes embedded in them. While my team and probably, 3,000 or 4,000 Kurds took Tuz, and Tuz is like south of Kirkuk. And these are major operations at that time of defeating the Iraqi military. And we driving through this minefield was one of the most nerve-wracking freaking things I've ever done. And I was actually driving. But we got through that. I'll never forget that night. And we set up in Tuz. And immediately there was all these different ethno-religious tribal militias spun up like against each other. And there was like 16, we counted, and there was probably more, 16 different factions of Kurds, Turkmen, Arab, you name it, Shia, Sunni, dynamics of like Shia, Sunni, Arab, Persian, Kurdish, Turkish, and then political even too. There was like communist Kurds. Each one of these groups has like their own little compound suddenly. And the shit just hits the fan internally. And this is where like when people say we didn't have a plan for Iraq and like that part I totally agree with, because we were like, okay, let's figure out what we're supposed to do now that basically we kicked Saddam out, the Iraqi military's gone basically. Now we have 15, 16 factions of different groups fighting each other for territory. What are we supposed to do? So we had, many moments there, like meeting with tribal leaders and shit, where we're trying to explain democracy to them. And they were like, so basically whatever tribe has the most people wins. And we're like, yeah. It was more than that, man. I'm trying to speed it up, but that was some interesting stuff. Having these big dramatic meetings with the tribal elders of like a thing. I was like west of Tuz one time, specifically I'm talking about. One time my warrant officer and I met with IGK. These are the terrorist guys that we blew up before, because when the war kind of was over, we didn't know if we were supposed to keep attacking terrorist groups. And we had no like guidance on that. So we actually ended up drinking tea with the IGK guys in Tuz.
Wow.
And trying just reporting the intelligence of them. And of course, that was a nerve-wracking moment as well, man. And like, because their first question to us is like, why did you drop a bomb on us and kill 100 of us in our headquarters building in Kermal? Which is something I didn't mention before, by the way. And I told him point blank, I'm like, because you were supporting Ansar Islam, a terrorist group, and you were on our list of terrorist groups. Like right there talking to him in a freaking lawn chair in the front of his basically house.
Wow.
And like, and he was like, okay, that makes sense. And he's like, but we were never terrorists. And I'm like, whatever, dude. But so there was weird shit like that, man, where when the war ended, we weren't sure what to do on the terrorist front, never mind like what to do in terms of establishing a new government and all that shit. And we had Turkmen groups we met with, same thing. We ran into a Turkish special forces guy who was embedded with the Turkmen groups. And just chance encountered that guy inside one of the little Turkoman compounds, and we ended up talking stuff. Apparently that guy had been like involved in a JSAT that went to Turkey one time. So he knew like what SF's about, and we were trading stories about our kit that we were set up, and we were shooting the shit with this guy when you know why he was there. He's stirring up shit in the Turkoman groups while we're, stirring up shit in the Kurdish groups, basically.
Wow.
So anyway, man, it was total weird confusion like that at the end of the war. And it wasn't long before we got the word to just pull out. I think Marines maybe took over our area, and we freaking drove all the way home, or drove all the way to like Mosul or something. Got on a bird and freaking went home, man. I was sitting in my living room freaking 36 hours later, I think.
Yeah, which is a horrible idea.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was at the start of the polar opposite shift.
It was, because what happened almost immediately was I came down on orders to go to the schoolhouse. Come down on orders means you get reassigned. And I got reassigned to be an instructor at the Special Warfare Center.
Is there a story to why?
Well, I had actually, there is a story. It might be a boring one, though, but I came down on orders before Iraq, before we got word we're going into Iraq. And I declined the orders so I could go to Iraq with my team. Because can you imagine being a SEAL
No.
and you're like on a team, your team just got told you're going to friggin' war, but oh, by the way, you can't go. You need to go teach buds.
Yeah. No thanks.
You wouldn't do it. So I said no. But when you say no in the Army, when you have orders, that basically means you're going to get out at the end of your term of enlistment. So I basically sacrificed, I want to go to war with my team as opposed to being able to essentially continue my service and retire.
Yeah.
But when I got back, I ended up, or was it before? I don't remember. At some point, I wrote a letter saying, please turn my ability to stay in back on. And I think it was right when I got back. And then they immediately put me back on the same orders. And I had a report date of like 3 weeks or something. So I'm literally off the plane from Iraq. My ears are still ringing. And like, I'm on orders to go to Fort Bragg to be an instructor somewhere. And I got 3 weeks to get my shit together and move my family, which my daughter was an infant then. She was born like 4 months before I went to Iraq.
Another thing in common that reminds me of a similar thing where at the end of the initial Iraq invasion deployment, the last phase of it for us, we were up in Tikrit, and we took down the entire city, including Saddam's palace. And we're there for a few weeks doing sniper overwatch and some follow-on hits and stuff as everything was getting established in the city. And then our deployment, we had already been extended at that point. So same kind of thing, like went from, almost getting mortared on top of Saddam's palace to jumping in a C-130 in Kuwait a few hours later, in Dublin, fucking Ireland on a commercial flight a few hours after that, Delaware, San Diego, 36 hours later, I'm in my car getting pulled over for having expired registration,
Yeah.
And
you're like, you can't even think.
Yeah, like the cop's like, what the fuck, your registration's expired. And I was like, dude, 36 hours ago I was getting fucking shot at.
Exactly.
In Tikrit. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
You're almost like, what's a registration again?
But yeah, it's just like that almost...
That's how I was. Man.
Yeah, 1,000-yard stare, like, dude, I don't even know where the fuck I'm at right now.
Yeah, like I got out, I remember, getting off the bird at Peterson Air Force Base, I think it was, and driving, they bussed us back to Fort Carson. My truck is parked still in the parking lot, and it was like we just came home from the range or something.
Yeah.
I'd go, nobody's there. I'd just go jump in the truck, fire it up, and drive home. And up the road a mile or so, I actually pulled over and I was like, what is fucking happening? Like, I'm about to go see my wife and my infant daughter, and I can barely keep my shit together. Like, I don't even know where I am. I'm having a hard time remembering how to even get home. My brain is still just screaming with stuff, man, you know? And like, it's actually an interesting dynamic when you, in the modern world, you can travel so far so fast. You can go
Yeah.
from freaking a sniper on a roof to getting pulled over by the cops in freaking 2 days, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I've seen a lot of things written about, even going back again, coming full circle to the, Greeks and Romans in their war campaigns being as, such a big part of their society and culture. But they had, 2.5, 3 months of hiking and camping and non-combat related, sitting around campfires, hunting, decompressing until they got home. By the time they got home, it had been, a couple of months.
Yep.
And they had been able to do that just with the boys, not with families, not thrown back into society. And that's a huge part of why they were able to continue to do that for centuries.
Exactly. Yeah, we definitely didn't have that. And this is 2003, like, I don't think the Army was aware as much as it was now of that kind of PTSD and all that shit.
Yeah, I think it's come a long way, but still not probably where it needs to be.
Like, I don't think I even knew what that was at that time, But that was kind of the end of my team time, as they call it. And I never went back to a team. And there's a couple reasons why. One is, to be honest, I didn't want to, man. I was done with that shit. The war and the shit I saw, I think I had my fill. Call me what you will, anybody listening, but I was it for me, man. I checked that block. I was ready to move on, pretty much immediately. I also was, I tried out for Delta at some point. I forget when it was, and they discovered I had a degenerative eye disease when I took that, the flight physical you got to take, which is a really intense physical. I think it's because you have to do Halo school or whatever, and I had this degenerative eye disease, and even found out that my eyes, I could barely even meet the Army standard of vision. So I have terrible eyesight. That was part of me coming to the. That was part of the equation of me deciding I think I'm done with this shit. I'm like, my body is going to shit. I got this disease basically. I'm trying to figure out the timeline there on that. I don't know why, but I still went to Iraq though with that. But afterwards, that was part of my fuel for just feeling like I'm done with this shit. And because also, man, just as a personal note, I guess I had this, I think a lot of guys have problems with expectations, and I was one of them. And by the way, I think this is part of a lot of people's mental health issues that gets them in a bad place. Is they have this expectation of themselves that they're going to be a super warrior when they're in combat. And maybe you weren't. I was very disappointed in myself of how fucking scared I was, man, in all these situations. And also there was this one moment in Viking Hammer where I was popping up on these rocks in the stone wall situation and firing. One time I shot the stone wall right in front of me. I felt like a freaking idiot, And it was, even going back to Kosovo, man, it kind of brought that up where I'm why am I so freaking scared in this shit? I'm supposed to be a badass. And then I'm I had feelings of, emotion about, or guilt around the Iraqi shit, the Iraqi military, and just obliterating those guys when they didn't fight us virtually at all. And I'm I think I felt like I wasn't supposed to feel like that, man. I was supposed to be invincible. I was supposed to be awesome, and I wasn't supposed to have these weird emotional pussy shit that I was having. You know what I mean? And but I did have that, and I think that was fuel for me to really kind of seize the opportunity that I didn't even know was about to be handed to me when I got reassigned to be an instructor. So this is what happened with the reassignment, and this is where the 180 goes, and honestly, it's the best thing that has ever happened to me in my life. It has got me to where I am right now. I was put, so there were, in SF, we call the schoolhouse, the Special Warfare Center, and in there's a bunch of schools, like the basic Q course, sniper school, Halo, whatever, all that shit is part of scuba is one of them. By the way, I failed scuba school. That was another disappointment to me. I went through pre-scuba and no problem. Went to scuba school in Key West though, but I failed the one-man competence test. That's one of my regrets of my service, by the way. I've never going back and getting the bubble.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was a side point. But there was this new course being stood up called the 18 Fox course. And an 18 Fox is the intel guy on an SF ODA. I just threw like 20 acronyms around, but in the Army, 18 series is SF. It's Green Berets. 18 Bravo is a weapons. Charlie is like demolitions and engineering. Echo is comms. Delta is 18 Delta is medic. And then the 18 Fox is the intelligence specialist. Then you have the 180 Alpha and the 18 Alpha and the 18 Zulu, which are like the leadership guys. Anyway, that was a little, just so you know. 18 Foxes, you can't become an 18 Fox until you've been one of the other 4 MOSs first. It's like a senior kind of thing. And they were spinning up this new course by some super smart dudes. One guy from 7th, or both of them were from 7th group. And my old team sergeant, who was my team sergeant in Kosovo, he was already there, so he didn't go to Iraq with us, unfortunately. And he actually is the one who pulled me into this new course, which was the new intelligence course that had never been done. And the charter of it was to use like advanced technology, cutting edge shit to teach, to do intelligence on an SF team. Like prior to that, it was all like, paper maps and, plastic overlays and shit. And you just did the intel stuff as part of the advanced non-commissioned officer course in general. So this was like this brand new course, technology focused mission of the course. And I got pulled in to be one of the first instructors of that course. Totally by chance of my team sergeant being there. His name was Frank Sosha, by the way. He passed away from cancer. He's one of the baddest dudes on earth. And I owe him a lot in my life, man, for bringing me into that, because it changed my life. So he brought me in and told me, the typical SF shit, man. He's like, you need to teach this thing called Geographic Information Systems, or GIS. And first, GIS, I'm like, what kind of weapon system is a GIS? I was coming from like the 18 Bravo world. And but anyway, man, to make a long story short, I had to stand up a curriculum for teaching, SF guys how to do intelligence, geospatial intelligence using GIS systems. So very technical shit. So I had to learn how to use like digital mapping, doing like geospatial processing of images and all kinds of data processing. So I had to, at that point, I don't think I had touched a computer, because computers weren't that ubiquitous like they are now, even in 2003, especially in like the military community. I don't think it was that much. I've only used the computer when I was doing like radio-based stuff, like, some of the stuff that had the ALE and all that kind of shit. So anyway, man, I was brand new to computers in general. I didn't really know what data was, man. I didn't know what geospatial was. I didn't know what an information system was. I didn't know shit. But basically, that was my new mission in life, man. Like I knew, well, actually, my wife helped me realize that like this is a serious opportunity. That like this is a skill that is like it's actually a burgeoning skill set. Because you think about technology in general and like where it is in its like hockey stick moment of innovations, like that area was when like advanced analytics, big data, all that kind of stuff was starting to be a thing in general. And I don't think my wife had some intuition around like, you should take this seriously and I did. I made it like my mission in life to learn that stuff. I went to a couple courses to kind of get a jump start so I could at least know what data is. You know what I mean? And within like a couple years, man, I was writing code as like a uniformed E7 behind the keyboard. And I'm like automating, geospatial intelligence. And I wrote the whole curriculum for the course. It became like doctrine. It was massive, man, huge. And total 180. So I went from gunslinger to code slinger in the course of like 3 years, doing something that if you would have told me about it 3 years earlier, I wouldn't have wanted to do it. You know what I mean? But it was the experience of war and the bullshit that I kind of realized that it was, that made me really jump on it. And I kind of
just ran with it.
Yeah, I really, you know how it is when you go, it's like mindset shit, man. Like when you want to become a Green Beret, like you're not going to make it unless you are like 100% obsessed. You know what I mean? Same with SEALs. Like you're not going to make it through SEAL training if you're kind of halfway into it. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
You'll quit. You're just not going to cut it.
Yeah, you can't have see how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. Like the instructors will pick up on it and throw you out, or you'll quit.
Well, they'll just fucking vulture, zoom in on you, and you'll be fucking gone in 20 minutes.
They'll hammer you. So I tried. Not necessarily on purpose or anything, but I had the same mindset with learning how to code that I did to becoming a Green Beret in the first place, man, and going through Ranger School and all that shit. And I was like, this is it for me. Because at that point, I had like 13 years in the Army. Mm-hmm. And what did I? Yeah, I went to be an 18 Fox instructor when I had about 13 years in. And then I was there for 3 years. And then I became low-key, like famous inside of that intelligence world of SOF. And I made some friends at US SOCOM who had this, there was this intelligence fusion cell there called the Special Operations Joint Interagency Collaboration Center, which was, again, this was in the early days of this idea of data fusion and the idea of an interagency task force. You know what I mean? For this GWOT whole of government approach to fighting this war. And I kind of, let's just say I made some friends, and I had the benefit of the eyesight problem that I could kind of evade going back to an SF team, because I honestly didn't want to anymore. So I got my next assignment after being an Intel instructor was to go to this SOGIXI program down in Tampa, Florida at US SOCOM, and basically kind of like be in charge of the geospatial intelligence crew and a software engineering arm and basically a couple ORSA operations research specialists. And I kind of ran the team down there at the same time of being a contributor myself. And man, my like tech career just took off like a rocket ship, man.
Before we get into that and kind of how it's led into what you're doing now, I want to take a minute to thank you for being so forthcoming with your attitude towards war, the experience that you had with it, kind of looking inward and being honest, not just with yourself, but with the audience. There are very, very few men who have sat in that chair with your experience that would ever admit something like that.
Yeah, well, thanks, man.
Yeah, I mean,
appreciate it.
No, I mean, I appreciate it because it's. I think it's something that. I think everybody who's done any of the things that we've done have had moments of. I mean, I can say for me personally. I mean, I remember when we were getting ready to take the GoPlat down, I was absolutely fucking terrified. The war hadn't started yet. I was the intel guy for my platoon, and there was a point at which during the lead up and the training exercises or the rehearsals for that specific mission, where we had the corroborated intelligence understanding that there was over 100 enemy fighters on board, and that their goal was, to take our lives at whatever cost, up to and including just blowing the entire thing up when we stepped on board and turning the entire oil platform into a fucking suicide vest.
Yeah.
And we still, we hear that we have to do this, and you guys are going to do it. So to say that the cottonmouth factor riding the boat onto that motherfucker was significant as a woeful understatement. And there were other periods too where I was absolutely fucking scared. And I think that's. I mean, to anybody who says that they never were, I think is full of shit, or you're an absolute psychopath.
I agree, man. Or you're full of shit.
Yeah, or sociopath, whatever the difference is that
I agree.
Maybe you're one of those like Alex Honnold rock climbing savants that just doesn't get scared because there's a weird wiring in your brain that doesn't allow you to or whatever, but those are anomalies, I think most guys. But that's the difference between courage and bravery and not is being scared and doing it anyway, and again, I want to thank you for that level of honesty and kind of level-headedness or.
Yeah, man, it was, I don't know, it's the truth, and like.
Well, but it's not the sexy YouTube and Instagram story that really anybody else is gonna tell. It's not. I got shot in the fucking neck and crawled my way, and I couldn't keep fighting because of that. It was no. I took a mouthful or a bite out of a big shit sandwich, and I didn't want another bite of it. And I think there's something very admirable in that. So thanks,
man. I think a lot of guys too, man, have. They go through what it takes to be a SEAL or a Green Beret or whatever. And then they don't have the moment that they train for. Mm-hmm. And I think people have a hard time with dealing with the fact that they never saw what they wanted to. You know what I mean? And that's what makes people lie and friggin' tell bullshit stories. And like, I don't know, for me, I felt like I did what I came to do, man. Like that was, and I feel basically satisfied by it.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, I would say, again, another similarity, my path was kind of similar. I mean, I went through the Iraq invasion deployment, and there were a lot of situations like that where it was kind of the Wild West, before there was any infrastructure put in place. We were, the only group, a very small group in an area way ahead of where any conventional forces were, and really hung it out and got into some big gunfights. And, when I came back from that, I ended up getting valley fever and losing almost half of my lung capacity permanently. Jesus. But I was allowed to stay in, and ultimately I decided to get out afterwards. And I have never looked back on it and ever thought like, man, I didn't do enough, or I wish I had 13 fucking combat deployments. Exactly. Like I did what I signed up for, and I'm proud of it. But when I was done between the lung thing, if I had been hell-bent on staying in and trying to finagle my way back into a platoon or as a handler or something like that, I'm sure I could have. Now, granted, I will say I wasn't sure in my ability physically to not be a liability, and that was a huge part of me saying, I don't know if I physically can do it, and I had too much doubt in that ability and didn't want to chance it. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up and again say I appreciate your perspective on it. Obviously, that was a huge shift career-wise, and that has now led into kind of what you're doing now, which I'm curious and both curious and fascinated by. What can you tell us about what you're doing now and how it all transitioned into that?
Yeah, so now I work for one of the biggest geospatial companies in the world.
Can you define geospatial as it relates to how you use it?
Yep. Geospatial is essentially modern day mapping. So you've got, if you obviously you've probably used Google Maps or like Apple Maps, right? And you've got two types of map views on that thing, right? You've got the one where it's just like the streets. It's like a picture of the map. but then you can turn on the actual images from like the satellite imagery. So geospatial is both of those types of things. And it's basically the data that we use to make maps and do different types of analytics. So for like in the military context, geospatial is like, those topographic line maps where you can land navigate from, but there's also like elevation data, so you can model terrain. And like nowadays, that stuff is all in data. It's all imagery or what's called digital elevation models, or what are called vector maps. And vector maps are like the overlays. You ever done like in the old days of the Army, you got like the map hanging on the butcher block, and you put a plastic overlay over it, and that's where you draw like the roads.
Yeah.
That's vector data for a map. And like when you're using your like Google Maps to like navigate, that's what that kind of data is good for. So it's the difference between kind of like overlays and imagery.
Yeah.
There's also like SAR though, like synthetic aperture radar images, which are a totally different type of thing. So the world of geospatial is kind of a niche technology realm that I have kind of stuck to ever since becoming an 18 Fox instructor and somebody telling me what GIS stands for.
Yeah.
And a GIS is a geographic information system, which is kind of geared towards using those geospatial data formats that I'm talking about. So I know it's like a bunch of jargon, but it's just the modern way of doing maps and analytics on location-based stuff.
Can you say who you work for?
I didn't clear it through them.
Okay.
So I don't know if I probably should have, but maybe people can just look at my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
So I think I probably shouldn't mention it.
You shouldn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
As far as the day-to-day, and I mean, if you're in Connecticut, can you work from home?
Yeah.
And what does a normal day look
Yep,
like?
I totally work from home. I'm 100% remote as of a few years ago, about 5 years ago. And every day, basically, I'm on the computer every day, working from home. And most of the time, I'm either writing code or I'm doing some kind of, leadership or what's called architectural type work.
Okay.
And when I say architectural, I'm talking about systems architecture, software engineering, and software architecture.
Is AI and where it's headed from your perspective, especially as it relates to code, but I guess just generally speaking with what you do, is that what you foresee as a potential threat to your job?
Not yet. I don't think so. I actually use it almost every day.
So it's a tool, but not one that can...
Yeah. I personally think of it like this, and it's just because of my daily experience with it, is it's a amazing, you could think of it as a efficiency tool. Like instead of me having to code up some really boring function by hand and figure it all out, an AI can write that function for me in friggin' 10 seconds.
Yeah.
But where AI isn't, where it hasn't gotten to yet, it will get there though, is big picture, systems where you have a lot of moving parts. You have a distributed system across a bunch of servers. There's all kinds of business logic, we call it, in the code that's distributed. Trying to tackle something like that takes people to know the context of what we call the use cases. So right now, I think AI, in terms of code generation and being a programmer's tool, is a productivity tool where it's super good at giving you a discrete outcome for something very specific. Like the way I use it personally is I tell it exactly what I want, and I try to break things down to the smallest piece to tell it what to do. And that works out super well. But if you tried to say like, hey, create me a system that ingests 300 data sources and puts them all in a database, deploys it all to 50 servers in the cloud, and with a user interface that handles like 3 personas of user, Like it's not at that point where it can take over, and that's where humans are actually the more important piece, is putting together the bigger context. So I don't
agree.
see it as a threat. I think it's an enabler right now.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm not sure that it'll ever get to that point.
Yeah.
For the simple fact that to me, and to your point, is that it's a tool. But to me, no different than, you can tell when somebody's using it that doesn't know what to ask it or doesn't understand the field that they're trying to kind of shortcut or cheat.
Right.
Because to me, it's a tool the same way having a team or a fleet of staff members that are helping you in your business.
Yep.
In that, the person running the business still has to know what to ask it and know if it's right or not, or if it's the best way to do it or not. And so to me, it really isn't any different than, again, having a group of people. It's just really fast and incredibly competent. But, take like law. I've seen, I guess, predictions that AI is going to, you're not going to need lawyers anymore. You're not going to need, whatever. And it's like, well, if you don't know shit about law, you're not even going to know what to tell it to do.
Yeah.
And so somebody who's not a lawyer who says, hey, draft up X, Y, and Z agreements or whatever, you still need somebody who has a very thorough understanding of the law to be able to look at that and know how to apply it and whether or not this is the right application for this case or scenario or whatever. And so, because you see that a lot with people running social media accounts, these young kids coming out of college that want to run social media or advertising or marketing for a company, and they don't understand the big picture well enough to be able to use it. And you can A, tell that they're using it, and B, it doesn't really work. It's you can tell they're kind of over their skis on it. And it reminds me of the memes when you lied on your resume kind of thing. And it's you can just tell, I know you're using it and you're not even using it right, kind of thing. The same way, a business owner, it's having somebody who's never worked in fast food now run a McDonald's. It's well, you have to have been the fry guy, the wash and lettuce guy, the burger guy, the fucking drive-through chick, you have to understand every aspect of the business to even really know how to implement it. But
yeah, that's right, man. I mean, AI is awesome, but it
has its limitations.
I think its limitations are on the fringes of super high level conceptual, when you need to put a bunch of things together, but also at the lower nuance too, very detailed situational stuff that can't possibly be represented in its training data, because ultimately AIs are a victim of their training corpus, and they're going to kind of generate especially the LLM stuff is going to generate based on how they're trained and what they're trained with.
Was your experience in war and subsequent PTSD the biggest driver in your decision to write the books?
It was a big one. Yeah. And also I just felt like the story wasn't being told about some of the early Iraq stuff. And I also it was part of me closing out that chapter of my life. Which, by the way, I wrote my book 10 years ago, which is, if I wrote it today, I think it would be a lot better, honestly.
Yeah. You and me both.
So it was lingering thoughts a little bit about certain things, and something I know about writing is I actually, part of my latter years in the military, I got a bachelor's in English and almost completely a master's in software engineering.
Oh, wow.
That I finished the master's a couple months after I retired, but I basically had those two things. And I always wanted to write something too. I love reading, and I've actually always dabbled in creative writing a little bit. And so I wanted to write it just to write it, but I also wanted to I know that writing can help you decide what you think about shit. And I knew if I wrote the story, there'd be pieces of it that as I told the story, I would need to decide what it means to me. And I'd be able to move on. So it was kind of a cathartic episode in my life where I just wanted to get I wanted to leave the military behind, honestly, like I'd just move on, and which I did. I have very much like moved on from the military. I don't.
So almost like a therapeutic journaling exercise.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So it's you wrote One Green Beret, Operation Viking Hammer, and Quest for War, right?
Yeah. Well, here's how that went. Quest for War was actually One Green Beret.
Okay.
But I changed the name to One Green Beret. So those are the same thing. And you actually can't get Quest for War anymore at all.
Oh, okay.
So just get One Green Beret. Yeah. Operation Viking Hammer is actually just a subset of the larger story.
Oh, okay.
So, but that is actually in One Green Beret.
Okay.
Well, that's what you get when people self-publish, by the way.
Yeah.
I totally self-published it. So, by the way, I did self-publishing in itself is an awesome thing.
Yeah, that's what I did with Unfuck America, actually.
Yeah, I need to read that, by the way.
I'll give you one to go if you want.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
What haven't I? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, like, I initially tried to get an agent, and I actually had 2 interested agents. But they wanted me to basically rewrite it into a kind of pseudo-political BS.
Yeah.
And one, I didn't have time to do that shit because I have a real job. And I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be what I wrote it as. And so I went the self-publishing route.
That's the exact same reason I went with that. The first 3 books were under major publishing houses because it made sense.
Yep.
The Unfuck America one is very, I don't want to say politically motivated, but it's all about kind of the political aspects of our society and the division that it causes and whatever. And I didn't want hey, we don't like this. No, I'm not really crazy about how you worded that. Change it. Take this out because we don't agree with it. Like I didn't want to deal with any of that. You know? Whereas the other stuff is pretty black and white.
Yep.
You know. But
I'll tell you, man, like my book has done halfway decently.
Yeah.
You know, it's with zero help from anyone basically. And I use the Amazon.
the KDP.
Yeah, the KDP select thing, which is like you go exclusive to Amazon, but that's where most people get their book anyway. You know?
Yeah.
And most of my sales are actually like Prime page reads.
Oh, nice.
You know, so you have like 3 different mediums where you can sell through Amazon. I don't know if that's where you sell that through, but
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
anyway, it does okay. Like it spiked. I think, by the way, I don't care about my book at all. By the way, I think it's if people buy it, that's great. If they don't, I don't. No harm, no foul. But I think every veteran should write their story
Yeah.
and self-publish it. In fact, I think groups of people should get together and write books and just self-publish them. Like it's just it's like frictionless to do it. And like there's so many people out there, man. Like I feel like soft guys get the spotlight a lot just because of the status of those units and all that. But man, you know how many like infantrymen there are?
It was amazing stories. Yeah.
Who were in like Fallujah,
Yeah.
or what 173rd guys. Who knows, man? Like there are infantry dudes who went through some serious shit that no one knows about.
That's a big part of why this show exists, is for that reason. You know, just across the board is to give people an opportunity to share their story and have it be documented. You know, I think it's crucial. And you know, when I think back to like if this medium existed in World War II, you know, in Vietnam, and you know I think the more well-rounded exposure and understanding that the general public would have of everything that the United States has ever been a part of, you know, would be considerably more thorough.
Yeah, I have kind of maybe it's a dreamy, naive thought, but like in theory, the more veterans tell their stories about how dumb shit was, maybe someday some politicians would actually think about before they send people off to their death to do some bullshit.
Yeah.
You know? And like this collective knowledge of war is actually now like it can be completely accessible through tech, you know?
Right.
And like a lot of times some of these decisions will continue to not have a leg to stand on.
Yeah.
Given the body of evidence of what you're saying, of like people telling their stories. So
Agreed. Yeah.
the more people tell the stories, the better, man. The more the truth comes out and affects the future, man. Like, you know.
I couldn't agree more. And I can't thank you enough for coming and sharing your story. It's a fascinating one. And again, I just want to thank you for the honesty, you know, after being to combat and the impacts that it had on you. What haven't I asked you that I should have?
Man, I think we covered it, man.
Yeah, all right.
You know, I could talk about a bunch of crap, but we're good.
Yeah.
People can connect with me, by the way, like LinkedIn.
Okay.
A lot of people contact me about my book and stuff through there. And,
Yeah, okay.
and give some cool. I've had a few link ups and stuff from that.
Awesome. Again, just can't thank you enough for coming to share your story. Do you have some
Swag. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it very much.
absolutely.
The invite.
I don't know if you're into shit kickers and belt buckles up in Connecticut, but that box opens from the bottom of the front if you want to check it out. But
Okay. Oh, man.
yeah, just to commemorate coming on the show, and again, I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story. It's been fascinating to get to talk to you. A lot of parallels between our careers, I think, and of course the shirt selection and the guitar stuff is always a bonus too. So.
Yeah, man. Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Great,
thank you.
great
Yeah,
talk.
Appreciate it. To the viewer and listener, I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, you know, you can go choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.